Good evening and welcome to this evening's study session. Agendas for study sessions, including concept reviews, can be found by visiting Broomfield's website at broomfield.org. Our agenda this evening includes one proclamation and 3 study session items. Seeing there are no concept reviews on the agenda this evening, there will not be any public comment. As always, you can provide public comment to council by email, phone, or by attending next week's council business meeting where public comment is accepted. You can watch the study session live on Channel 8 and through video streaming on broomfield.org/council meetings. For our hard of hearing residents present, we have wireless headsets available in the back of the council chambers from our AV team. Mayor Pro Tem Schaaf and council members Leslie and Marsh Holshan are attending remotely. The first item this evening is a proclamation declaring September 17th through 23rd, 2025 as Constitution Week in the city and county of Broomfield. Representatives from the Front Range chapter of the National Society of Daughters of the American Revolution are in attendance this evening to accept the proclamation. Will the representatives here to accept the proclamation please come to the podium? And thank you all for joining us this evening. I'll summarize the proclamation. This proclamation recognizes the privilege and duty of the American people to commemorate the 238th anniversary of the drafting of the Constitution of the United States of America with appropriate ceremonies and activities. Every American shares in this legacy of liberty, and we are grateful for the courage, conviction, and sacrifice of all those who help preserve and uphold the principles of a free society. In celebration of the signing of the Constitution and in recognition of the Americans who strive to uphold the duties and responsibilities of citizenship, Congress requests that the week of September 17th through 23rd of this year be proclaimed Constitution Week. Therefore, as mayor, I hereby declare and proclaim the week of September 17th through 23rd, 2025 as Constitution Week, and we urge all citizens to study the Constitution and reflect on the privilege of being an American with all the rights and responsibilities which that privilege involves. Would our representatives like to make any remarks?
Front Range Chapter, National Society Daughters of the American Revolution thanks you for your proclamation. I'd like to introduce the rest of our chapter members. We have our regent. I'm sorry, I'm nervous.
Oh, it's okay.
This is Mara Nelson.
Jan Maddock.
Jan Maddock.
And Joyce Thomas.
And Joyce Thomas.
I'm the former chair, and now Therese Cortez is the chair.
Thank you very much.
Oh, no, absolutely. Let's take a picture. Let's let me present you with the proclamation.
Okay, good. Now we can go down front. Now we can go down front.
Do you ladies want to come to the front? Yeah. Team. Yeah, sending back Joyce's.
Thank you.
All righty. Didn't ask council for questions and comments, but that's okay, right? You didn't have any? Okay. Good. Woo, dodged a bullet. Our next item this evening is an update from the Broomfield Police Department. Chief Hempelman, would you please come down to the podium and share your presentation?
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and members of the City Council. I'm Anaya Hempelman, your Chief of Police. Before I begin, I want to acknowledge the recent tragedies in Evergreen, Utah, and across our nation, and our thoughts are with families, communities, and first responders that were impacted. Tonight, I will be providing some comparisons on crime stats and other interesting information. I've also going to include my deputy chiefs to present as they're truly running their bureaus within the police department. And with the retirement of Mike Clement earlier this year, they both have some additional responsibilities that they're going to share. Next slide, please. Okay, we're going to dive right into property crimes. Just a reminder, this information is available on CBI or Colorado Bureau of Investigation's website. In the top graph, we are comparing property crime stats for 2023 and 24, as well as the first 2 quarters of this year. You can see the downward trend throughout all categories. If 2025 stays on trend, you'll see a decrease in total property crime. The bottom chart shows property crime rate per 1,000 resident. And again, we see the same trends in all categories. I want to point out that robbery is at 0.06, which is less than 1 person per 1,000 is a victim. The highest category is larceny at 5.93 per 1,000. And I just want to remind everyone that that includes all simple thefts and all shoplifts, even if it's just $1 that has been stolen, that's included in that total number. Next slide, please. This next slide shows our violent crime stats. This compares same data, 2023, 24, in the first 2 quarters of this year. Our violent crime continues to be very low here in Broomfield. About 1 person is a victim per 1,000 resident on violent crimes. We'll talk about tonight some of the strategies that we're utilizing in Broomfield that I think is really assisting in these being this low. And we really do use a data-driven approach of intelligence-led model here at the Broomfield Police Department, and we'll talk about that in the next few slides. But I did want to share how low our numbers really are. Next slide, please. This is the chart that I think everyone looks forward to once a year. This comes out late in about this time of year, usually in the summertime, we get the numbers for the 2024 crime stats. This compares local municipalities to Broomfield. We use the same cities to compare to that we use all of our compensation and benefits as well. The population used for Broomfield in this chart is 77,072, and it's based on CBI's data. And in reality, we know that on the weekdays or weekends, we exceed over 100,000 people due to employment, business activity, and commuters coming into our city. In 2024, Broomfield had 21.92 total crimes per 1,000 resident, which is down from the previous year. The previous year, we had 26.07 in 2023. If you look specifically at violent crimes, you'll see that Broomfield remains under 2 victims per 1,000 residents, significantly lower than all of our neighboring jurisdictions. If you look at Denver, for example, it's 8.93, Lakewood is 6.96, and Commerce City is 7.96. The county comparisons are not shown here as they combine multiple jurisdictions. For example, Adams County would include Westminster, Thornton, Northglenn, and all the agencies within the county. So we really do pull the city comparisons because of that. The key takeaway in all of this is that we have very low crime in Broomfield, specifically low violent crime per the 1,000 ratio. Next slide, please. This slide I'm going to just briefly show, and if you like to really look at it closely, we'll leave it on so you can access it if you needed to, but it's the coroner's information on deaths that occur in Broomfield. The takeaway on this is that I'm asked quite often about related to firearms deaths. We had a total of 4, 2 suicides and 2 homicides involving specific to firearms. Next slide, please. I'd now like to introduce Deputy Chief Mark Cadell.
Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and City Council. My name is Mark Goodell, and I'm a Deputy Chief of the Special Operations Bureau, which includes investigations, communications, records, court security, co-responders, to name a few. I'm also overseeing the patrol operations until our new Deputy Chief is in place. Tonight, I'll be sharing a few updates from several key units. So starting with Investigations Division, we have successfully integrated cutting-edge technology to more effectively investigate complex crimes. One powerful new software we obtained was instrumental in the recent homicide trial of Daniel Krug. The evidence in this case was incredibly data intensive, involving multiple cell phones and computers. This technology allowed us to process all the data, present it clearly to a jury, which directly contributed to a first-degree murder conviction. Our regional partnerships also continue to grow stronger. Our investigators and special enforcement team brought a Colorado Organized Control Act, or a COCA, case before the Boulder grand jury, resulting in an indictment of 4 suspects involved in a regional liquor store burglary ring. To enhance our role on the 17th Judicial District's critical incident response team, we have added an investigation sergeant to serve as a coordinator. This strengthens regional collaboration and reinforces our department's leadership in managing critical incidents. And while motor vehicle thefts are trending down, we remain vigilant. One of our detectives was recently elected to the board of the Regional Auto Theft Investigators Group, giving Broomfield a stronger voice in statewide prevention efforts. Moving on to our communications center, I'm incredibly proud of our team's performance. The national standard recommends answering 90% of 911 calls within 15 seconds. In 2024, Broomfield answered 99.7% of calls within that time. So far this year, our dispatchers have handled over 11,000 911 calls, an average of more than 60 per day, all while consistently exceeding the national benchmarks. And finally, for this bureau, our co-responder program, or B-Corps, continues to demonstrate its incredible value. The team handled 353 mental health calls in the first 6 months of this year, a 41% increase over last year. More importantly, they are now responding in person to over 70% of these behavioral health calls in real time, a significant increase that ensures our community members receive the right care at the right time. Now I'll shift to update on patrol operations. Our field training program is the foundation of our patrol division. Since January, we have welcomed 18 new trainees into the program. It is a demanding process managed by 3 sergeants and 23 dedicated field training officers who mentor and evaluate our new officers, ensuring they meet the high standards of this department. Our K9 unit has been exceptionally active. In the first half of this year, our 3 K9s were deployed over 250 times, leading to the recovery of illegal narcotics and firearms, the location of 6 dangerous suspects, assisting in 94 arrests, and thanks to a grant, all 3 of our K9s are now protected with a stab and bullet-resistant vests. Our special enforcement team, or SET, continues to target high-priority offenders. In the first half of this year, their bait operations resulted in nearly 50 arrests or summonses, and their surveillance work led to an additional 31 felony arrests. They were also key partners in dismantling the liquor store burglary ring I mentioned earlier. Our patrol division uses data-driven strategies to deploy resources effectively, working with our crime analyst officers to develop special enforcement plans for high crime areas. These plans have led to numerous suspect identifications and arrests. Officers have also successfully used drones to locate suspects, find missing persons, and track those who tried to elude the police. Finally, with a focus on community spaces, our summer enforcement patrols increased their presence in parks, resulting in proactive contacts and addressing traffic and safety complaints. Our bike patrol team has also been highly visible in parks, open spaces, and at special events like 4th of July, and will be a key part of our upcoming Broomfield Days. That concludes my update for this evening, and now I'll turn over to Deputy Chief Plunkett.
Thank you,
Next slide.
Chief Goodell.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, City Council, Roger Plunkett, Division Chief for Special Operations Bureau, which is detentions, training, hiring, recruiting, internal affairs, and additionally, I'm overseeing Special Services Division. Tonight, I'm going to cover some information from some of the units, starting with Support Services Bureau, the detention operations. The detention center is participating in this competency court for the 17th Judicial District, as outlined in House Bill 24-1355, which supports inmates with serious mental health issues. The goal is to improve their social abilities, provide access to resources, and improve outcomes. We facilitate all records and complete transportation to other facilities and programs for their benefit. We assess these inmates biweekly through our mental health program, medical and forensic unit, and the court navigator. We're working in partnership with Bridges. This is a court-appointed, state-funded program to identify inmates regarding mental health, disabilities, and transportation. Once an inmate is deemed competent, we assist in integrating them back to the community. They are provided with transportation, housing, job training, medication-assisted treatment, and life coping skills. We researched and initiated a peer support program for inmates with drug use charges to offer them a resource with relatable lived experiences. They provide mentoring to those inmates and direct them to community-based programs. Next, looking at Strategic Services Division, we have a hiring and recruiting team now that has built a 12-person recruiting group that attends job fairs and makes personal connections with potential applicants. Thanks for their efforts and the trainees currently in academies, BPD is proud to report that we're fully staffed or will be soon fully staffed as long as there's no retirements. With some creative outside the box thinking, the team is also partnering with 4 regional police academies, which include Front Range, North Metro, Flat Rock, and Arapahoe Community College. And that shortens wait times and brings candidates on more quickly. Transitioning to the Special Services Division and the Traffic Unit. We're fortunate to secure the High Visibility Enforcement for Impaired Drivers grant for the second year, allowing us to conduct 7 targeted operations through June that resulted in 93 DUI arrests. We have 5 more operations planned at the end of 2025. We have a very busy traffic unit that not only provides proactive enforcement at our schools and in accident hotspots, but also carries a significant day-to-day workload. From January through June 2025, the unit issued 790 citations, top violations being registration 220, speeding 118. They investigated 3 fatal accidents and 15 serious injury crashes. This is an improvement from the same period in 2024 when there were 5 fatal crashes and 25 serious crashes, showing that proactive measures are very critical. The Animal Services Unit. This team stays extremely busy handling all animal-related calls in the community. In addition to their daily work, they hosted a vaccine and microchip clinic in May. It serves 72 animals, and they will host another one this fall. Looking ahead, the team is planning to partner with the nonprofit Petco Love Foundation, community-based program designed to quickly reunite lost or stray pets with their owners. Code enforcement. We have a wide range of community issues. Most recently, they collaborated with the courts and city attorney's office on a civil penalty ordinance for code violation, giving us a faster path to address problems through compliance and through fines. The team also continues to assist with the CHART program, our campsite housing assessment and response team, where they've completed 36 campsite assessments so far this year. Using code staff for these efforts is less intrusive than sending an officer, while still ensuring cleanups are coordinated and resources are offered to those in need. SWAT negotiation team. They work hand in hand to ensure clear communication with victims, witnesses, and suspects during critical incidents. So far this year, SWAT has deployed for 2 barricaded subjects, 1 armed and suicidal incident, 2 high-risk warrants, and provided safety support at 2 community events. At the same time, CNT has not only supported these deployments, but also shared their expertise in de-escalation, presenting it to CCOB staff, and conducting 4 additional training classes for other city departments. We recently responded to a barricaded suspect in a local hotel in which the subject had assaulted an officer with a knife, causing injury. The CNT and SWAT teams resolved the incident by successfully taking the suspect into custody. That's all I have. Back to the chief.
Thank you, DC Plunkett.
Thank you.
Okay, next slide, please. So in previous presentations, I placed a lot of emphasis on motor vehicle theft. And as you know now, motor vehicle theft is no longer the hot topic because that is down significantly. I would like to say that we have had a lot of discussions on street racing. That's definitely the hot topic now. And we don't take this lightly. I have to share that. We have done so many things proactively. I'm going to go off script here a little bit, but we have everything from officers working extra duty on Friday and Saturday nights to being present so that when these car meetups, as soon as they show up, we try to be present and deter them from going there. The intel that is needed to make sure that this happens is critical so that we know where they're going to be. Once we get that, we can show up, and then when we're there, they don't want to be there. So we're doing everything we can to have them go somewhere else. The important piece that we're working with right now is that there's many businesses that allow these car groups to come to their parking lots or their facilities. And that's private property, and we don't control that. So what we're trying to do is be very proactive with those businesses to say, please don't allow them to come here, because if you allow 20 or 30, they show up with 100 or 200. And what we're really dealing with is we don't have as many of the speed racing, but that many vehicles in one area with loud mufflers and noise is very disruptive to our community. So we're doing a lot of things proactively, meeting with the courts, meeting with our city prosecutors to see what other steps that we can do and be very proactive on this topic. I can share that during the first and second quarter of 2025, we did, not only did Broomfield do our own proactive measures, but we worked regionally with the work group 4 different times. And I can tell you during those efforts, we made 205 traffic stops and we wrote 179 tickets, which were focused specifically on the speeding and the modified exhausts. So I just wanted to share a little bit about some of the things that we're doing, as I know that that's a big concern in our community. And now I'm going to shift gears a little bit. I know DC Goodell mentioned our B Corps. I got this amazing letter from, we all know Commander Wiederquist received a letter from a community member, and he shared it with me. And it was, I'll give you a high-level summary because it was quite long, but it basically said this, and it was in reference to B Corps Supervisor Stephanie Van Jacobs. And if you remember, I brought her here, I think it was earlier in the spring or even last year, to meet you all. And it said, a family in our community recently reached out for help with their adult daughter, who has long struggled with severe mental health and addiction challenges. They described how overwhelming and heartbreaking it has been to try and support her at home. Through this difficult time, Supervisor Van Jacobs stood by their side, answering calls and emails, guiding them through options, and ultimately helping coordinate care when the situation reached a crisis point. Because of that compassion and persistence, their daughter is now safe and receiving treatment. The family also stated they have been navigating the mental health system for almost 20 years in different states, and they called Supervisor Van Jacobs top-notch and a gem. That kind of feedback, I think, speaks volumes to the caliber of people that we have here at the Broomfield Police Department. And I just want to remind and thank everyone for allowing us to have B Corps in-house, because it has truly been an asset to not only the police department, but to our community. And then lastly, I had a few council members ask about this Blue Envelope program. So thank you for inquiring. We looked into this about a year ago, and then we kind of held on to it. And there's so many other programs that are similar, but we have implemented the Blue Envelope program. And it's basically if a police officer comes in contact with someone with this Blue Envelope, it just means that they may have some accommodations or needs. Maybe they can't communicate or whatever the issue may be. We are currently, in the next 2 weeks, have scheduled to train our police officers to make sure that they know what to do when they receive these. And then the community can come by and pick these up at the police department. And they're very simple. It's just, literally, you can have this on a traffic stop. If there's a language barrier, if you're hearing impaired, whatever your needs are, you can just hand this to an officer, and then they know that. And so you're immediately able to calm the situation down and make sure that you can deal and help them with whatever they're struggling with. So that's a new program that we have implemented. So thank you for those of you that asked about that program. And lastly, I have to share that tomorrow is the Chief's Senior Walk at 10 a.m. at BCC. Registration begins at 9:30. It is free. It's just, you can walk with me, you can walk with our command staff or any of our officers who are there. And it's the senior walk that we have done. This will be the 3rd annual. And I think that concludes our presentation. Next slide, please. Thank you very much for allowing us to present tonight.
Thank you very much, Chief Hempelman and Deputy Chiefs. We really appreciate these updates and the trends moving down. So keep up the great work, everyone. We're just so lucky to have this reality. Any questions from my colleagues? Councilmember Nguyen.
Thank you, Mayor. And I think the work that the men and women of our law enforcement is phenomenal. It's amazing. I just want to give you a lot of shout outs for that because crime is down, new police building, full positions, capacities. My question doesn't really relate to that. It actually, from your earlier statement about the current gun violence that happened in Evergreen. And one thing that I read and I saw was that some flags were not seen. And I just want to see how the extreme risk protection order, or, the red flag law would be implemented for potential, individuals who might harm others.
Yeah, and I think Nancy, you could probably, or Ms. Rogers, you could probably help us talk about the red flag because that is already being implemented here in Broomfield and has been for a number of years.
Yeah, thank you, Chief. The City and County Attorney's Office has an attorney that spends a lot of time with the police department, and one of her key roles is to assist them on ERPOs, and we've done, my goodness, a
Maybe
handful.
10, I was gonna say in the last
Yeah.
couple years,
Yeah,
5 to
and
10.
a lot of times it is just making that connection with the family or the loved one or the friend that is raising the red flag and trying to work with them on that process, which might include getting that extreme risk protection order at the end. But it is a tool that we've utilized in the past to success too. And we've been able to safely confiscate guns from people and keep them away for a year as the law provides.
No, I appreciate that. And again, this doesn't mean that I appreciate the note of 10 cases of this, and obviously I'm very impressed with the work you've done and with the deputy chiefs as well, because the professionalism, the community engagement, high praise. So I appreciate your presentation.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Henkel. I messed that up.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Chief. Thank you, everyone, for being here tonight. And we really enjoy these presentations. Councilmember Cohen was the first one to ask for these presentations, and I really appreciate the leadership that we've taken to really explain sort of how we create safety in Broomfield and how we create safe places for people as well with that Blue Envelope program. I do want to ask about Councilmember Anderson and I have been working on the street racing issue together in Wards 4 and Ward 5 too, but across Broomfield, and it's just been sort of everywhere. We have people wanting us to run state law. We have people wanting us to run local laws. And I notice on our website, people can go to broomfield.org and then it takes you to a report street racing site. What are they finding in these working groups? It looks like we do belong to, various working groups. Are there any sort of signs pointing to next steps or talk about that? It seems like each jurisdiction has its own way of doing its own work. Some people are using cameras and things like that in other places. So is there something that we could do locally, do as a state, or what's the answer so far?
That's a really hard answer. I don't have a simple answer for you, and I can promise you if I did, I would be front and center with this team and this police department. I've posed this question to other chiefs. I've posed this question to the different organizations that we're part of, and I think the proactive measures that we have to continue to do can't stop. One of the things that we're trying to think outside the box. One of the things that we're doing is having that proactiveness to say, for example, Commons Park. It is a park, it is a community space. And because of that, you have to get a license to I'm trying to think of the word, to assembly there. So many folks, after so many, then you have to get permission. So what we're saying now is even thinking outside the box to say, you can't meet here because you don't have permission to congregate with this many people without getting a permit first. That's been helping in that community. But we really need everyone to kind of be the eyes and ears. I don't know if cameras are the answer. Very costly. I think that's a different discussion for probably another evening. And I know that's for the future. And like I said, I think it's just a matter of us being proactive. The thing that we do regionally, and as a matter of fact, Commander Wichlats is our traffic commander, and he's part of those meetings, is really to get the intel to say where are they going to be next and try to get there before they get there. The thing is they meet up. If it's Flatirons, then they meet up and they say, okay, where's next? And then they say, okay, let's go to this location. And then they're not putting that somewhere where we can beat them to the punch. The big thing that we're trying to prevent, besides the noise, is to make sure that they're not driving so fast that it hurts someone. And that's where we're going to get more, that it's almost easier to enforce. So the simple answer is we just got to keep doing the work. We need to be proactive. We have ideas with our judges on board, our city prosecutors helping us so that they prosecute these at a different level, and that we make sure we document when we're writing summonses to say this wasn't just a summons for driving a little too fast or whatnot. This was a group of individuals who were thinking about speed racing, and then maybe they can help us tag those a little bit, be more strict on how they deal with those individuals in the court side.
Gotcha. Thank you. Well, if there's any support that you need from council, I would love to support anything towards this street racing issue. And it is a huge sound issue, but it is also a safety issue. I've actually left for the gym at like 4:30 in the morning, and on I-25, it is a street racing show. And they're going easily, I want to say 100, 110 at least. And it's just very dangerous. And they think they own the road, and it's not fair to others. So thank you for the collaboration on that. If there's any support as far as like offering permits, or, we have to get permits at certain private places. I know that private property is different, but thanks for communicating with those private property owners and telling us,
Yes.
hey, skedaddle. And I just appreciate the continued conversation on this. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next is Councilmember Ward.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you very much for the presentation, Chief. I really just want to ask couple questions about the property crimes or the stats that you had on the table. In terms of total property crime, you mentioned larceny. Is Flatirons Mall still kind of the largest area where larceny is occurring? It's obviously
It is.
a very large regional mall.
It is.
Are there any other kind of areas of issue, or is it really just the mall that's kind of obvious for everyone?
Well, we have Walmart. We have a couple Walmarts in our city, and those bring some thefts as well. What we're seeing, so we have a crime analyst. So every week he actually sends us an email with the data. And so I look at that every single week. And you usually see the same stores at Flatirons and whatnot, just because of opportunity, the exit areas of the parking lot. So that's usually the bulk of what we're seeing, those thefts.
Okay. And then in terms of, I don't know if this would fall under robbery or burglary, but I know bike thefts used to be a kind of a somewhat big thing. Speaking as someone who's had 2 bikes stolen now. Has that also subsided along with motor vehicle thefts, or is that kind of hovering consistently? I know we had a bait program with bikes.
And we still do.
Okay.
So, gosh, I'm going to ask my commanders, how many do you think we have in 1 week of arrests or citations with our bait bike? 10? Am I too high? 5? So we are very active with our bait bike, and it sadly is stolen quite a bit. Because of that, I think the criminals are starting to know that. And so I haven't looked at specifically bicycle thefts to say if that's impacted, but I can tell you we're very active with our bike theft program.
Okay, great. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Wynn, did I accidentally hit your button? You're good, right? So I can undo you. Would any of my other colleagues have any questions? Oh, sorry, did I skip you? I'm sorry, Councilmember Cohen.
Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate it. I had a couple of small quick questions from your presentation. But first, let me thank you about the blue envelopes. I'm thrilled.
You're very welcome.
Appreciate you. The response was really fast. And I think it's really important that we were part of that program, especially some of the different housing that we're bringing into the community. I think it's really important that we're doing that. So thank you very much. 2 quick clarifications I wanted to ask about. You mentioned that co-responder responses were up 41% over the previous year, correct?
Yeah, Mark or DC.
Is that capacity, or is that because what do you think is the cause for that?
I think it's probably our officers on the street understanding that we have this program and then referring people to the clinicians since they're on and getting them to come out and not, just pushing off the call like, how do I deal with this now that we have our own in-house in the last year, and those relationships that they build with them, they're like, okay, let me run this by them, and then getting them out more.
Okay, terrific. That sounds like a successful implementation. So appreciate that. And I also forget who was talking about, but you mentioned a hiring team, which I think that's new. Is that a new strategy? And I wanted just a little bit more. That sounds really novel and exciting that how that's
Yeah,
working?
it is fairly new, and we wanted to make sure that the officers, especially the younger ones, were involved in the recruiting and hiring rather than just our background investigators. So they had some investment in who's coming in and working with them in the future. So it is something new, and we've actually done some regional recruiting where we've gone to some local states as well as within our own state, which we hadn't done in the past, and that's becoming fruitful too.
All right, terrific. Thank you. I would interested in learning about that. Finally, I talked to a resident. I promised to bring this up because I haven't heard the postmortem on the 4th of July and the enforcement of the commons. This one person was kind of upset, felt like it was too much of a police state, was her words. But I didn't know if that was an outlier comment, or did you feel like it was successful? Or can we pull back a little bit for the next year, or what your assessment was?
I think it was success. I can tell you for Broomfield Days, we're prepared. You're going to see police, you're going to see our presence, and I think it's important to do so. And I think it's important that, I can tell you 20 years ago, I remember that Boulder had officers with rifles at special events, and it was unheard of. You're going to see that more, and you're going to see that on Saturday. And we assess these every single year. We change the setup, where we're at, location. This year we added security, as you know, private security. All those things are critical. So as far as the presence, I think it's good. I think people feel safe when we're there. And I sure would hate if we weren't there and God forbid something happened.
But the assessment from 4th of July that you didn't have any issues that we
No issue.
experienced before.
And I can tell you, I talked to Ms. Hoffman. It's almost a thing where I block off the 5th of July because I know I'm going to be dealing with the complaints. And this year, I didn't get any. It's unheard of. I don't say that lightly. I mean, it's not just, and it's everything from too much enforcement, not enough enforcement, should have done this, and it's everybody opposing the other side. I got 0 complaints, 0. And Ms. Hoffman, you can probably,
We thought something was wrong with the email.
yeah, really, really.
No, and I say that in all truthfulness, because we plan a 2-day debrief afterwards, which then influences the subsequent 4th of July. So no, we only got comments, positive, that it was a family-friendly environment, that it was smooth, that the layout, they liked the fence. And just real quickly, Chief and I meet frequently, and last week was the first week that Broomfield PD is fully staffed. That is a really,
Yeah. Crazy, yeah.
and it's not only kind of jazz hands, but the rate with which Broomfield has been promoting from within is what creates our vacancies. So oftentimes when you look at those numbers of vacancies, one would draw a conclusion that we're unable to hire those, when in fact, when you look at that snapshot, it really is the number of Broomfield PD that are being promoted that then leave those openings. So really significant milestone, certainly the first in the last 4 years. Well done, Chief.
Well, thank you very much.
I had one last question, which I had mentioned to a manager before about asking if, I wanted to just follow up. You had mentioned some budget issues with the DA, and if there's an update on that, that'd be great to hear.
Interestingly enough and timely enough, Mayor and Mayor Pro Tem and I had a meeting with the Adams County Board of Commissioners. And just a little bit of a background, just in a nutshell, because Broomfield is part of the 17th Judicial District, part of our budgetary process is the DAs don't have to come to Broomfield for approval of their budget. That budget is overseen and approved by the Adams County Commissioners. Broomfield, by statute, pays our proportional share per population. Tracking that over the last 3 years and doing a deep dive with regards to not only the case filings and misdemeanors and felonies, but this year we were completely door popped by a $630,000 increase, which then has implications across the board in order to solve for that. So that conversation today with the commissioners and with the DA's office is to be able to say what's creating that increase. It's from 2019, it's 126% increase while our population has increased 10%. So digging into those numbers from a data-driven perspective, more conversations to come. Councilmember Cohen, you will see that increase of the 630 reflected in the budget when we discuss it on Thursday. It's in the court budget, our municipal court budget, simply because it makes sense just because it's from the judicial district.
Is it safe to say that we are going to be getting an amended estimate after that conversation today?
I think it would be safe to say that we are going to be recommending
Okay.
a revised budget based on the numbers and also the implications for Broomfield. I think it's also safe to say that the process through which we will be reviewing the DA's budget will look different. I think it's also safe to say that the calculation upon which in that statutory guidance with the 17th Judicial District will also be up for discussion and on the table for 2026 into the 2027 budget.
All right, is that all for my colleagues? I want to go back to not so much the street racing, but the car clubs, particularly the one that likes to go roll up into the commons around 9 p.m. And then there's so many cars that it takes past 11 p.m. to clear them all out. Did you guys kind of discuss possibly requiring permits for these hundreds of people that just decide to descend on a
Well-
quiet park at 9 p.m.?
I would hope that if they apply for a permit, that would get denied, right? So from the standpoint of we're trying now to be there and tell them that before they start moving in, because half the problem is when you have that many cars, it takes the 2 hours, as you stated, Mayor, to get them out. And that's the noise.
Right.
So yeah, the work on us is to get that intel so that we know we're present and then we start warning them as they're coming in. So that's really the goal, is to prevent them from coming in and not even looking at the permits, but being able to utilize that as our ordinance to say, you don't have a permit to be here.
So do we have a permit, an ordinance that we can require?
We do.
Okay.
Yes, we already do.
And so I haven't received any complaints in the last few weeks, so you guys must be heading them off at the pass.
That's exactly right.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
very
you
welcome.
so much. I truly believe people deserve to have the peaceful enjoyment of their homes. And the folks around Red Leaf and in that area, all around the commons, were not able to do that for a long time. So thank you.
You're welcome. And I want to thank Sergeant Terry, who's working overtime here at our counseling, because he actually personally reached out to the car. That's what DC was just whispering to me. He actually reached out to each one of those car clubs and told them about our ordinance and told them don't come. So that may have been one of the big steps besides him looking into our ordinance and
I think it worked.
I think it
I
worked.
think it worked. Well done, y'all.
Sarge.
All right. Well, I have nothing else. Thank you all again for bringing the update, and stick around, I guess, because you're next on the agenda too.
Thank you.
Thanks, y'all. Our final item, no, our second to final, next item is an update for council regarding the proposed police building. Council has a copy of the agenda memorandum, and I'll ask our staff to begin the discussion.
Thank you, Mayor. And making their way down is Katie Allen, our Director of Community Development. And we have the architects that will also be participating in the conversation. This has been a long time coming, and one that Miss Allen, rather than retiring last year, we were on our hands and knees indicating, please stay until this is completed. We're grateful, Miss Allen. Please introduce us to this topic.
Thank you very much, Manager Hoffman, Katie Allen, Director of Community Development. And I'm here tonight with James Taylor and Jenna McKaylee from Anderson Masondale Architects. And of course, I'm here also with the chief and her staff. I'd like to just do a shout out and thank the police staff. They've attended about 40 hours, and that's a conservative estimate, of design meetings in the last 10 days, as well as doing their other jobs. So with that, next slide, please. So I'm going to give just a quick status update, and then I'm going to turn it over to the architects to show some much better slides and pictures than I have. So we first brought the police building to council in November of last year, 2024, and that was following what we call the pre-design work. That was really a study to figure out where the building should go and what the layout of the site, and we presented that. We came back to council in March of this year to award a contract for design to Anderson Mason Dale. And that contract includes the next 3 colored bars, schematic design, design development, and the development of construction documents. So where we are today is about a quarter of the way through the design development stage. And we'll be refining that design now through approximately May. And the goal is to start construction in June of next year, and that's about an 18-month construction time. Next slide, please. So I took the slide straight out of their slides, so it'll look familiar. I just borrowed the image. Right now, we have a building that's approximately 84 to 85,000 square feet. The estimated construction contract cost, so what we would see as a guaranteed maximum price from a contractor, is about $73 million. And our estimated total project in terms of the construction itself is just under $80 million. So that would include that $73 million construction agreement, furniture and equipment for the building, owner's contingency, should we have any scope changes on our end, utility relocations, including the solar panels out front, water and sewer license fees, as well as construction support from the design team throughout that 18-month project. Next slide. Okay, so where we are right now, we recently issued a request for proposals for a construction manager, general contractor for the job. And we have selected a firm, FCI Constructors. And they will come on board during the design. They will do something called pre-construction services. And that contract is, I think, roughly $110,000. So that can be approved by the city manager. And they are going to jump into our design meetings, provide cost estimates, constructability reviews, give recommendations, and that goes back to the architects. And we do this iterative process to refine the design and really hone in on the cost estimate. And when we complete those construction documents, they bid the work to all of their subs competitively. So we make sure we get competitive pricing. And then we will bring a construction agreement, a guaranteed maximum price proposal agreement to council, hopefully in that May timeframe of next year. So with that, that's our status update. I'm going to turn it over to the design team to go through the building itself and the site.
Thank you, Ms. Allen.
Good evening. My name is James Taylor. I am a principal at Anderson Mason Dale Architects. Mayor, Mayor Pro Temp, members of City Council, thanks for hearing us. Good to see you all again. Don't let her retire. I don't know if that I can say that here, but I will. Katie is amazing, and so is, even though they've thinned out a little bit, Katie mentioned that we spent all of last week and parts of this week with really detailed user group workshops with all of these people back here and many others that are in the other building there or hopefully home with their families. And I've been doing this for 28 years and 24 of those have been in public safety. And I can honestly say in front of this group that this is the most professional and the best group we have ever worked with. Your chief on down to every officer we've met across the street there has been absolutely fantastic. So, and Jenna reminded me of this, of course, but thank you. And thank you all back there. It's just, you're going to have you have a wonderful community, but your facility is going to be that much better because our real experts are back there with the badges on. So thank you. And especially, I have to make a shout out to Scott Svensson, Sergeant Svensson, and the snacks have been outstanding. So, Let's get into this. I know everybody's probably tired and wants to get home, and you've seen some of these slides, so please slow me down, or you can ask some questions a little bit later. What you're looking at is a site plan, a partial site plan of the campus that we are on today. The building, I believe last time we presented, but I'll reiterate that it is going where the existing photovoltaic panels are, those PV panels, the solar panels over on the northwest side of the site. We will be building right on top of those and decommissioning those as part of the project. We are expanding the secure motor court, or the parking lot, for the police, adding approximately 100 new secure spots. Total disturbance acreage-wise is roughly 5 acres of the site will be under some form of construction when FCI begins that. The main public entrance, and we have some images to support this, is on the south end, just above the words "new public parking." So what's really important with public safety facilities, and something we don't have today at this site, is access onto 2 different right-of-ways. So right now, the police are limited to leaving their secure area right on the 3rd Avenue. We are proposing a new drive on about mid-block on Descombes Drive, and that will allow the police to have 2 means of egress out of their secure lot in case one became closed for whatever reasons. And that will also be the new access point for the public coming to the building. Next slide, please. Someone already stole our beautiful aerial view, Katie, not to name names, but again, the most important takeaway here is the public element, the public entry piece on the south end of the building next to that curb cut and that parking area. You can see that we're going to be expanding the secure fence, the perimeter, to capture those additional parking spots. We'll be doing some construction work within the parking lot to reconfigure what is already there. We are looking at providing parking canopies with integral photovoltaic solar panels on top of them. That's starting to show up all over our communities right now. And I have some slides a little bit later, we are limited of how many we can get onto this site because catty corner through the site, and there'll be a later slide, there is an existing storm sewer line, a very deep storm sewer line, and the appropriate utility easement for that. And we cannot build solar panels on top of that. So it has limited us a little bit, but we are still excited about covering about maybe 40 to 50% of the patrol fleet. Next slide, please. I presented this last time, and just to revalidate the need of this new facility. Right now, they are in about 35,000 square feet, plus or minus. If we were to take that exact program and put it into a purpose-built facility today that met all their needs for the staff they have today, that would be between 70 and 75,000 square feet. So they're doing their great job in half the square footage. They are on top of each other, and we are missing a lot of things that we would consider best practices. We are looking at growth, of course, and the current facility we are drawing is around 84,500 square feet, plus or minus, and that will flex a little bit as we continue to draw. Next slide, please. The diagonal yellow is what I was referring to as far as the underground utilities, especially that underground storm sewer that is would be very difficult to relocate. But we are aware that perhaps the next generation of architects and police will need to expand this building 20, 25 years from now, and where they might do that. We have allowed for that to happen just east of the new facility. That would obviously require some structured parking and things. We can't really look too far in the future, but we don't want to hem them in. We do want to create some ability to expand much further down the road. And then next slide, please. I have a series of floor plans. North is up. Again, that public entrance is in the light peach colored at the bottom. Thank you. The building is really broken in, it's a two-story building, but it is broken into two halves. The half on the left or the west is where everyone more or less works. It's the people zone. We do have a lot of people working on the other side. I don't want to discount that. But for the most part, the office spaces that you would expect in a public safety facility are all on the left side of the plan, on the west side of the plan. There's a little middle piece we're calling the hub, which everybody we've talked to on the police side is really excited about that. It's got, and we have some images, and I'll talk about that later. And on the right of that middle zone is sort of where we store all their gear, especially on the ground floor. So this is where we've added a lot of the square footage to this facility because they just simply don't have that today. And that is enough room to store all the evidence for the next 20 to 25 years. A right-sized forensics lab, vehicle storage for some of the vehicles, the special response vehicles that the police have or are obtaining, making sure those assets are inside and protected from the elements. We also have all of our patrol officers and special services officers' records, and the briefing room is downstairs as well. So all those sort of first responders right out the door on the first floor. We can go up to the second floor now. So again, most of the people working in the building, with the exception of our wonderful communication staff, are on the left or the west side of this building. Upstairs, we have our administrative suite for the chief and her staff. We have the investigators in their multiple divisions. Victim services, we are adding and expecting a new critical incident room and a real-time crime facility. So something that we are seeing more and more of, and making room for that as that becomes a reality here in the Front Range and in Broomfield as well. And then on the right side of that middle zone, we have the lockers and fitness for all of our staff. It will be sized to accommodate the full growth of the building. We might not buy all the lockers with the first package, but we certainly have enough room for them to grow there. An increased size of a fitness room. It's very important on these facilities to have an integral fitness room as part of their facility. We really don't expect them to go to other gymnasiums. I think it's just, and a lot of time, I say that because a lot of times that gets cut, and it's one of the biggest misses in our world. So I want to make sure that our officers and their staff all have that ability. And then in the green, there's our communications, our 911 staff. A little nuance there is the best practices and some of the codes around the 911 call center, specifically a code called NFPA 1225. We'll be using a lot of the best practices for that facility, meaning it's sort of its own standalone unit. It's got redundant mechanical systems, redundant electrical systems. You could sort of live there during almost any event in the Front Range here. Next slides, please. So now, I don't think we got to talk about it last time we were here, but we're starting to think about what the building might look like. And there's a lot of great resources in Broomfield and here on the campus. I call it a campus, but here on the site. What we're seeing around town is expressed structures, so expressed columns, frames, framing around windows. We're seeing light masonry materials, so a lot of vertical, just rectilinear framework around a lot of the buildings that we'd like to pick up with. There are some nice wood elements over here on your community center we'd like to pick up on. And then some accents with a little bit of maybe some special colored stone as well as some metal panels. So you'll start to see that. Next slide, please. This is the front entry. So we're looking north. It's if you just pulled in and you were in the public. The first thing you would see is the community room. And there'll probably be some signage, and this could be where we deploy some of the more softer stone materials, any of those vertical soffits or overhangs, porches. We would recommend having some wood soffits underneath. Thank you. Again, that some expressed colonnades. One thing we're often asked is, can we make the community room more transparent? And that's usually from the architects. But here we actually want to reduce some of that transparency, but increase the amount of daylight. Obviously, reducing the transparency because they'll be doing a lot of some training and a lot of presentations in this room. So we want to make sure that what's going on in there is private, safe, secure. Next slide, please. So moving around counterclockwise, this is a view of that entry. You can sort of see the wood porch, if you will. Again, we like to use those porches. People are familiar with them. They make it more comfortable in hot weather or in rain when it does rain out here. They also provide some shade, and they also are just an architectural feature that people associate with accessibility and openness. But this is a view from the secure parking lot. You can see sort of the dark element in the middle there is the entry for staff. That's that middle hub zone between the two halves of the building. Again, probably looking at a lot of masonry, similar color tones that you have on the campus and around Broomfield. There will be some metal panel and obviously glass where we need it. Next slide, thank you. This is the day-to-day entry for most of the staff. So this is taken looking west. So this is our east view. You can see the larger overhead doors for some of those vehicles I was talking about. You can see the window into the 911 communications there. We want to give our 911 staff, our communication staff here, access to daylight, but we don't want to necessarily open them up to the public view. So that is one of the reasons we've turned them inward a little bit, and their views are out towards the secure motor courts. We feel that's a really safe way of introducing natural daylight, but not introducing some of the potential threats that unfortunately might happen when we're facing the other way. Next slide, please. This is probably the main public corner of the building. It doesn't have a series of entries at all, but it is the probably the most prominent corner you're going to see at the corner of 3rd and Descombes. This is where we might see some of the larger special response rooms, or I guess it's kind of this, a mix of classroom space and training space, and that's our real-time crime center up there. And again, using a lot of masonry at the base. But I wanted to pinpoint a couple things with this view. And I think in light of so many things that have happened over the past, but even recently, it's worth noting that we're looking at ballistic protection at the base of the building. So we recommend that the sill height, the start of the windows, is above standing head height when you're inside of the building on that ground floor. So somebody working at a sit-stand workstation, their head would not be would be slightly below a window. So a lot of those windows are going to be up high. We want to introduce a lot of daylight. It improves so many things when we have access to daylight, but with daylight comes security risks. So a lot of our windows are going to be up high for the police staff, but we'll make sure of those details later. Next slide, please. Another view, again, that you can see the base of this building seems sort of tall and sort of anchored in masonry. Again, that's to bring that sill height of those windows up on the ground floor for safety and security reasons. Next slide, please. So these are a little hard to read, but we've cut the building in certain sections and starting to look at the interiors of the building. I mentioned how wonderful this group is behind me, but they are very excited about the idea of being one big community, and they're getting out of their silos. They don't want to be in suites or big offices, office quadrants. They want to be out in the open with one another, so that all the different departments mingle and work together. They feel, and they live by that ethic outside, but they want to live by it here in the facility. So we're taking down a lot of the interior walls and allowing a lot more open office areas and letting the building and the people in the building breathe a little bit. Next slide, please. This is a view cut right through the front entry in the community room on the left, conference room up above that, and then a little bit of two-story space to bring in some light into the main lobby area. You can see the counters. We have records and a security counter at the front door. Trying to maintain a really open, transparent sort of presence and customer service approach when you walk in, but also knowing that those windows are ballistic and that the walls around them are also ballistic. So it's a balance. We have to really balance that idea of customer service and transparency and accessibility with the ballistic protections. Next slide, please. this is that middle or hub zone. So this would be really a fun open office zone. We'd have different areas for break activities, a lot of report writing, different huddle spaces, not excessive, but just enough to really, I think, create more excitement for perhaps all the police, but a lot of newer police officers we're finding like to work in the outdoor in these types of environments. It's how they've grown up with that mobile technology. But we're also providing enough spaces so they can have private conversations and those sorts of things. And a little outdoor area there too. Next slide. Regarding sustainability, the building will, for the most part, be an all-electric building. We are looking at 6 rooftop units that are the heat pump variety. They will have gas-fired backup. Heat pumps, even low temp heat pumps that we would expect here, probably work till about 10 degrees, and 10 degrees and lower, we're going to have to introduce electric reheat and some gas for the backup. But more or less, this is a very sustainable approach. It's one we're finding on a lot of new facilities, both public safety, higher ed, everywhere is going with a heat pump system distributed to VAVs with electric reheat, really driving down the electrical loads from lighting using LEDs and natural daylights and daylight control, low flow fixtures, all the things. We do have a lot of showers here with the restrooms, but a very sustainable approach to your mechanical systems, but not bleeding edge. It's something that's maintained very well in the Front Range here. All the contractors install it. All the facilities people know how to use it. So it's not a system we're nervous about, but it's a system that's going to provide a lot of 30 years of good use on that. Again, you can see the photovoltaic, the solar panels over the carports. There's a lot of roof here. We could start to look at introducing solar panels on the roof too, and driving that renewable number up and the electric demand down. Next slide. I guess that was a redundant slide. So we're EV ready. A lot of the model codes coming from the state of Colorado now are requiring a lot of infrastructure under our parking lots to power the future EV fleets of the world. We're not buying a lot of those today, but we will be putting in the infrastructure, the conduit, a lot of 4-inch conduit to various places throughout the site for future EV chargers. Still in this marketplace, we're not seeing a lot of EV charged police response vehicles, but you might see it more with the, with your staff. But things could change. So we need to be prepared for that. And the state's actually requiring that we are prepared with all that underground infrastructure. Next slide. Hard to read. Really hard to read. It's a font issue.
Oh,
Classic.
okay.
This is, yeah. Energy use index is how much energy the building uses by square feet. Is the middle column. You can see the numbers. And that is an ASHRAE or a code number. And they've already driven that down to 56.2 is the EUI of a typical police station requirement by ASHRAE. Not that long ago, it was over 100. Lower is better. With the strategies I described and a bunch of others, we are targeting just under 40. If you want to do your homework, an EUI of 40 for a 24-hour facility with 911 is pretty exceptional. So we're excited to bring that to council here. And then on the right is some greenhouse gas emissions. Again, lower is better. So usually when you go all electric and you have some photovoltaics, solar panels on your site, you're going to bring that number down. So apologies for that. Hopefully you can see it in your package, but we'll I can answer any questions about that if you need to. Next slide, please. All right. Cost, at least the numbers are consistent here. We benchmarked the row up top is 5 different projects on the Front Range, 5 police station projects on the Front Range. They've been escalated to $26. And The average there is about between $875 and $900 a square foot. We also recently completed a third-party cost estimate for the project with the Cumming Group, and they came up with a cost per square foot of about $871. So what we're drawing and what we're proposing today is pretty in line with what we're seeing on the marketplace. And I will say a handful of those numbers are actually coming from the CMGC that Katie mentioned as well. So the next step there is for FCI constructors to look at the drawings that we have and do their own cost estimating, but we like to do that for our clients ahead of the CMG selection process. So
Excuse me, since this is being broadcast, people probably won't understand what these five
yes,
options are. Can you verbally say
can.
what they are? That would help.
so there are five, yes, thank you, Mayor. Upper left, that is the Windsor Police Department.
Okay.
Next is the Firestone Police and Courts. They have a community courts piece.
Okay.
Middle, North Glen Justice Center. Westminster Justice Center, which is just under construction, not too far from you. And then another project we've worked on, which is the Lone Tree Justice Center.
Okay. Perfect.
And then the BWFS, that is actually average construction costs. And that's that 871. Yeah, there's a code. And then down there with plus BMP TUT is actually all costs escalated to Q3 2026 dollars. And right now, the escalation we're seeing in the marketplace is anywhere between 4 and 6%. So we're not seeing major or significant issues with tariffs at the moment. So next slide. Hopefully not. Oh God, thank you.
Yeah.
Snapshots work better. This is really just taking that square foot cost and looking at that broadcast over the square footage of the building. So we're in that $70 million range. If you escalate it to third quarter 2026, $73 million. And that was the number that Katie Allen mentioned earlier. So, and that is the construction cost, not necessarily the total project cost. So that's a contract you would have with your CMGC partner. And I believe that's the end of our presentation.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
So much. We'll go right to questions from council. I'm very excited about this. Buildings now excite me. They never used to, but this does. We'll start with Councilmember Ward.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess this question is going to be for staff. In the memo, you guys mentioned that there is, for fixtures, furniture, and equipment, an estimate of $2.25 million. Is that for entirely new equipment, or are we anticipating reusing some existing equipment, furniture, fixtures, et cetera, from the current police department building and bringing that over?
Ms. Allen?
I think generally new, it's a factor industry used for this type of building at this size. So we haven't gone through elements. That's just based on square footage of a new police building right now.
Okay. And in terms of equipment, is that factoring in, I assume, like radios and all the equipment that officers use, their weapons, handcuffs, vests, et cetera? Or is that
No.
for a different?
Different. It's not,
Okay.
it's specifically for the building and not for operations.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure on that. Those really were my only kind of big questions for the time being. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Lim.
Thank you for the energy usage data. The will in this iterative process between construction firm and your design firm, will we have new estimates of the cost of construction before we go to bond this?
I'm going to take that one, Councilmember Lim. Much like other conversations that we're having, oftentimes what you can afford is what drives the building until you begin the design phase. And then it is the wants versus the finances. In this case, that's not the direction that we're going. So we are going to bond for $80 million. And that is what the building is going to come in at. Architect, correct?
Okay.
Miss Allen?
Exactly. No, that was
We-
probably recorded.
We have belabored to the degree, Councilmember Lim, same conversation is being had with the courts. That gone are the days of kind of having that wish list and then paring it back and doing what we consider to be value engineering, which you'll hear a lot of developers talk about value engineering. So we wanted to ensure on the front end, from that financial perspective, that we can afford this. And that's what's driving the cost. And PD is well aware of that as well as the architect.
Thank you. Somewhere in the information, there's a good note that there will be neighborhood meetings for about the design. So this may be for staff. So I was a little concerned about the radius of those reaching out to the neighborhoods. So is this, I mean, obviously we don't have a lot of housing right next to this area. So are we, when you referred to neighborhood meetings in the information, are we talking about inviting all of Broomfield to these meetings, or what are we referring to here? It's a different system here, I think.
Two things. We'll be working with our communications department, so that meeting information will be public. And, you know, we'll have a minimum radius that we have today of 1,000 feet. We can look at that. I haven't done that radius to see if it's a useful radius to capture enough people in the area. But anyone can come to that meeting. And we're going to wait till we have that contractor with us, because a lot of the questions are going to be construction logistics and stuff like that. And really, they're the best people to answer it. So we haven't had that yet.
Okay, thank you. And then this is offshoot here of the for the courts. Do we have any idea at all on the timetable for the court updates? It is going to be in the bonding, I understand.
It is, and once you bond, you have to spend 85% of that bond within 36 months. So the timing, first and foremost, we need to defease the 2017 COP bonds, which we plan on doing, and that comes off of the top line with regards to the bond for the police and courts building. So we don't want to assume additional debt, which means you assume an additional payment until those are defeased, which then you can offset those annual payments. So for example, Councilmember Lim, right now, those COP bonds that we're going to defease in 2027, it's just over $3 million. It's about $3.3 million in annual payments that will then be applied to the $6 million payment. So oftentimes people see that $6 million and they say, geez, now you're gonna have to come up with $6 million. One of the reasons that we're so focused on the timing isn't just the need for PD, but the timing was really to vise those bonds before we pick up any other bonds. So it's going to be a pretty quick clip. We can't do anything with the courts until we get our crew out of there and moved in. And by we can't do anything, I mean tangible, construction related, but we will have designed and phased and be ready to move to varying degrees as soon as we start moving our PD out. So it's a tight time lane, but one that everyone is committed to, particularly because you have to do the 85% within the 36 months.
Thank you. Thank you for explaining those constraints. Those are my questions.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Henkel?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for being here tonight. And I agree, our police staff is just amazing. I hear nothing but great things from the community. So thank you all for being here tonight. I did read the schematic design for tonight, and it just said that the current facility lacks many of the spaces required for operational needs in a modern public facility. And so I would like to sort of lean into how is this building better and compared to this old building? So it talked about elements that we don't have right now that, we can't support disasters, let's say, critical incidents, victim support, and then talking about, health and wellness. How important is it to have something, because I just don't know. So how important is it to have places for health and wellness, like let's say to work out, if we have our rec center right across the street? But we also know some people work maybe 2 shifts and they have to stay in one spot. So I would love to hear just sort of what's the constraints right now and how are these improving those?
Yes, I can speak to some of those or all of those really. On the critical incident piece, I think it was actually really telling when we were in our workshops 2 weeks ago. There are only 2 small conference rooms in the existing facility, and they are using what they call their EOC, but their special response room for absolutely everything. It is overbooked. It's not large enough. And it's directly adjacent to the Chiefs conference room. So acoustics is terrible. So having enough space to do special projects, or if there was a case involving outside agencies, having that ability to do that in the right and in the appropriate scaled space is very important. I mentioned the real-time crime center. That's not a large space, but that is coming quickly. So having capacity to do that in the near-term future. It's not an overly large fitness area. It's a little bit larger than they have today, but it is a wonderful amenity for exactly the same reasons you have. Honestly, officers don't always want to go over to a public restroom. We can imagine the reasons not. So I think having that space and that ability, if they choose to do that in their own facility, is really important.
Councilmember Hinkle, I'd like the chief to weigh in just from a specific perspective, but I can tell you from an incident command and a war room, when the Marshall Fire came, probably 40 of us were packed in that room. And it is not conducive, even to the degree from logistically, we all couldn't plug in our phones. We all weren't able to have any additional side conversations because of not only the size of the room, but it's more like a conference room versus a specific incident command room. And before the chief speaks, the times that I have been over there when we've had officer-involved shootings, when we are in that intensive, in that space, in that mindset, from a mental health perspective, to want our folks to not have down the hall a place that they can go run it out or sweat it out or lift it out. It is truly wellness and mental health for our first responders.
Yeah, thank you for that question. I mean, I know I've presented a few times on the space needs, but I can tell you just specific to a couple of the questions that you asked from a perspective of the fitness room. A lot of for example, dispatchers can't leave. So if they wanted to work out, they would just go down the hall, do a quick workout, come back, and they bring their radios. If an emergency happens, they have it on, they walk right back in. Officers, if they're on duty, they can't just go to the BCC and work out. They may be able to, and they do it on duty, and they may just take off their gun belt, and you'll see them working out. Again, radio's on. If something happens, they bolt. They can't bring their weapons into BCC and leave those unattended. That would be terrible for obvious reasons. And just the whole mental health. I mean, we can go on and on about the wellness room. It's really just a quiet room. Some of the things that we're looking at for our dispatch centers, they have no room. And we've joked about their little kitchen area, which is literally just a countertop, is right next to the restroom. So to be able to have them stop and walk away and just take a mental break from what they're doing is critical. The mental health piece, and we talk about this, and we talked about it tonight with B Corps success, but it's critical and I'm a big, huge proponent, and our wonderful architects have heard me say the importance of the mental health for everyone, not just our officers, but our victim advocates. Our victim advocate room used to be, I don't know the size, but it had a couch, a table, and then it had a little separator and then a couple chairs. So if you were dealing with a family, you can have the kiddos watching TV and kind of be in the same room, a space enough that you can have a conversation. We've taken that room now and made that a sergeant's investigation space. So we don't even have an area for victim advocates other than a room that I would tell you, you've seen it, it's in the upstairs hallway. I don't know what the square footage is, but it has one couch. And if you're in there, you almost have to turn sideways because two people can even stand in that room. So without going into every area and the needs, that's just a couple of examples. I know you'd asked a couple more, and I didn't write them all down, but that's just a couple of the examples of some of the needs for the questions I did write down.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I think mental health is probably the #1 service we can offer our
I
first
agree.
responders. I truly believe in that. And so any space that we can create for our first responders in that regard. Our family has been in Thornton when our daughter was almost kidnapped. We were in a room, and you have to bring everyone with you, you know,
Yes.
and there's people there like victims advocates trying to just help you process what's going on. And you just need a space away from the investigators too. So I think that's
Exactly.
really important.
Exactly.
So thank you for that. One more just maybe sort of odd question. There are some things, because I've done a few ride-alongs over the course of 6 years being on council. And I love doing it because I learn more about the critical needs of our police department, and then also what our equipment does and does not. So there's certain equipment on police vehicles that we don't always publish to the public, because if the bad guys knew about those things, they wouldn't, you know, they would be on to us, right? So there's certain things that we use to, I don't know, solve crime, let's put it that way. Are there any sort of super secret squirrel things about this building that people don't need to know? Is there anything about the building that would be
I
critical?
don't think so. One of the things that we are going to make sure to have room for is a lot of our SWAT equipment, just because it needs to be inside the material of our Bearcat, all those things. It's more about making sure that with us having the severe cold and then the heat, that's really what this is going to benefit. But there's nothing that we have that's like, this is the secret squirrel area. And as a matter of fact, I hope that when we do have this beautiful building, we can welcome the community to even take a tour and just show them, this is where your money has gone. So I don't, and maybe I've been to many, many buildings, and I haven't seen anything that's like, okay, this is the room.
Thank you. Yeah. And then one last question, just talking about the windows, you mentioned ballistic. People might not know what that means, so can we explain what that means? And then also, I think there was a word on the building called curtain wall, and I didn't understand what that was. Thank you.
Ballistic it's a level of protection from a firearm. So there's many different levels. We would have protection on the exterior walls. It's a discussion we're going to have because it depends on the firepower and the weapon tested. Certainly on the inside of the building, on the lobby, when I said somebody comes into the lobby and the walls and the windows between the public and the staff has a ballistic level protection, that's going to be for a handgun, the most powerful handgun, a .44 Magnum. The reason we use handgun and not the really expensive, really thick assault rifle is because with the way the building is set up, you could see somebody coming in with that particular arm and you're going to leave. But it becomes sort of cost prohibitive and rather difficult to even speak around one of those frames. So the industry standard is a UL 752 level 3 protection on the interior glazing and interior walls. On the exterior, we'll do the best we can to meet at least that UL 752 or UL 752 level 3 marking on 8 feet and below. A lot of that is going to be done on the opaque or the non-windows, the non-curtain walls. I know it's a fun name, but curtain walls are windows. It's kind of a fancy way. Windows that go tall. Yeah, I don't know why they call it curtain wall. It should be glass wall, but they call it curtain wall. But wherever we have opaque walls that are 8 feet and below, where we have people sitting or standing or working, we're going to be using either a fully grouted concrete masonry unit, cinder block, as a structure, or there are armored panels within that wall. There's some different products we use in that. We will be looking at films from a blast protective standpoint. Again, it's really hard to protect completely against all of these threats, but things that keep the glass in one piece, especially during a blast or, getting shot at, things like that. I say all of this, there's no real metric as far as what you need to hit. We'll do the best we can within the resources we can, but you can't really guarantee that the entire building is a hardened box. I mean, if somebody had bad intentions, there could do a little bit of damage to the building. We can't secure it 100%, I guess is what I'm trying to say, but we would do the best we possibly can with the budgets we have, and at least try to exceed what normal facilities around town would do. Does that answer,
Yes, thank you.
Commissioner Hinkle? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Cohen?
Thank you, Mayor. Now that I've seen the plans, I think I understand why you're at full staff. Nobody's leaving, right, for the next 2 years until we get into this building. The conversation about fitness and stress relief made me think about, because I work at UC Healthcare, and all our hospitals have what used to be called recharge rooms.
Yeah.
For this, we can't call them that because we got a trademark cease and desist. So I forget what they're called now. But I was looking up because they have, not to give you an idea, zero gravity and massage chairs, virtual reality, space projections, calming sounds, everything for the same kind of stress reduction for healthcare workers that I'm sure police officers and anybody in the police department needs. So I understand you have something similar in mind, or is that just, you were talking about the fitness space?
We have both.
Both,
We have the
okay.
fitness space, which that's doing fitness, but there's a wellness suite, and your department is very focused on wellness, and not everyone are. The wellness suite is independent of the fitness. They're loosely related, but that is a small room or a series of rooms with the wellness coordinator that actually has those quiet rooms. I don't know if they have a zero gravity in place today,
That's an
but it's
idea.
really wonderful what they have in their makeshift space today. But it is a place to go, be by yourself, and do exactly what you described.
I'm glad.
And they're putting a huge importance on that here, your chief on down, of how important that is for officer mental health, which is just fantastic. So
No, I think I applaud that. I think that's a great idea. I think you had an upstairs open air courtyard too, which
we do. And that's next to our 911 communicators, and they have one of the stressful jobs too. So to get them outside.
the building next to me at work has them, and I'm always jealous because my building doesn't. And I see people out there taking advantage of that all the time. I had two last questions. One, I was just curious, was there anything on the wish list that you didn't get? Or you're satisfied with what we're able to afford and put into this building?
We've spent the last couple of weeks really having our employees give input on their wish list, if you will. And of course, we have all of our supervisors on those teams as well. So we could kind of help manage that a little bit as well, as that could grow legs. But right now it's going really well. Everyone, when James had shared this group, and I check in because I attend some of them, but not all the meetings. I think we're doing really well with what we want and what we really need. And because we're in the situation that we are with, how, I don't want to say how bad it is, but how non-functioning the building is, they're so grateful for this new building that they're being really reasonable and fair in what they're asking for.
Okay, good. Don't want to have it built and then have regret. So
Exactly.
appreciate that. The last question I had was in terms of the courts, because I think we're all very eager to make sure the courts get the space they need as well, since we know they're over capacity as well. We don't know exactly what they need, correct? Have we done that assessment in terms of when we get to that point? Or will we need to, does this anticipate a possible expansion of the existing building to accommodate everything the courts need?
It does not. We simply can't afford that. So they have been, I've had lunch with them twice to reinforce that this is your amount. Again, it's a different mindset than generally, excuse me, from a development perspective. You kind of go through that wish list and then you pare it back. In this case, we know that we're not going over 20 million. And Katie, Miss Allen, has been in communication with the 17th Judicial District so that we are able to temper and manage expectations on the front end. So you don't spend that much time kind of reeling it back. So just to do the updated codes for the building codes is going to be really significant for that building. So a phased approach may be the best approach. And so prioritization, no one is going to get everything that they want, and it will be with a pretty quick clip that we're able to understand what it is they need versus kind of what they'd like to have. But those safety and security would come first with regards to the courts.
We can always charge the DA high rent, 600,000 perhaps. Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other questions from my colleagues? Seeing none, I want to thank you very much, Chief and Ms. Allen. And are you Mr. Dale? Are you Anderson?
No, I'm Mr. Taylor, James.
Oh,
Yeah,
James,
that one's the easy one.
you even made the connection, James
Yeah.
Taylor, when you.
It's the height, I know.
Thank you so much, Mr. Taylor, and thank you all. All right, our final item this evening is a joint service rail update. Council has a copy of the agenda memorandum, which I'll ask our staff to begin the discussion.
Thank you, Mayor. And joining us this evening, I don't know if Brandon Schaefer is kicking us off. You have a very long mouthful title, so I'm going to let you do that particular introduction. Thanks very much.
Of course. Good evening, Council. Good to see you. Thank you for having us tonight. My name is Brandon Schaefer, Special Advisor for Passenger Rail and Transit for the state of Colorado, and I'm here with some colleagues this evening to provide a more thorough update and overview of what's going on in the Northwest Corridor related to rail. We've been in front of this council 3 times now. The first time was for Senate Bill 184, where you all gave a favorable recommendation last year for the Senate bill that imposed a congestion impact fee for rental cars to make multimodal transportation more possible here in the state. And then we also tonight are going to have a few colleagues presenting alongside of me. So we have Patrick Stanley from RTD, who led the Peak Rail Service Feasibility Study. We have the Interim General Manager, Chrissy Bright, from FRPR, Front Range Passenger Rail, and then myself and Mo Sullivan, who's the Assistant Director of Passenger Rail at CDOT, provide the joint service overview for you. So really just walking you chronologically through the separate rail projects and what joint service is to make it a little bit easier for council to disseminate the rail projects that are concurrently going on tonight. So I will pass it over to Patrick.
Thank you, Brandon. My name is Patrick Stanley with RTD. I'm the manager of civil engineering with RTD, but I served as the project manager for RTD on the Northwest Rail Peak Service Study. So good evening to all the council members here tonight. I'm going to give a real brief overview of kind of what the Northwest Rail Peak Service was about, and we wrapped this up in September of last year. And then kind of talk about how it kind of relates with the joint service that we're talking about right now. So for those of you that don't know it, probably everybody pretty much knows at this point, the Northwest Rail was part of the 2004 Fast Tracks vote. At the time, we did a study in 2010 for the EE, which is the 55 trips per day, 11 stations, full double tracking of the entire corridor. At that time, we didn't have the funding to move forward with that particular project. So, since then, we've been doing several different kind of studies to try to figure out a way that we might be able to bring some rail service up to the Northwest area. The first segment of the Northwest Rail, the B line, opened in 2016. That terminates right now at the 72nd station near Lowell right now. And then in 2017, the peak service study concept really started to pick up steam. And in 2022, we launched the peak service study, and then we concluded that in 2024. So the peak service study was really all about what is the feasibility of doing a three trips in the morning, one direction, and 3 trips in the evening, the other direction. So leaving Longmont coming into Denver in the morning, 3 trips, and then turning around and having 3 trips go from Denver back to Longmont in the evening. It basically operates currently on it would operate on the BNSF tracks as they are today on that current alignment, which is a freight rail tracks. It would include 6 new stations. There were 2 identified in the peak service study for Broomfield, one at Flatiron and one at over by the I'm sorry, Broomfield 116th. I apologize. And then we also looked at a rail maintenance facility would be up in Longmont towards the end of the line. Next slide, please. So just real quick, kind of get into the conclusions of that study, which like I said, we ended in September 2024. Basically, we coordinated with the BNSF. We actually had them do a 30% design for us to tell us what would be needed for us to operate on their corridor, passenger service. Obviously, they run a business, so we want to make sure that they're whole and that we can still operate. We had a consultant put together a reasonable travel time that we thought could be done on the corridor given the track geometry. And that was 65 minutes plus or minus 2 minutes for the travel time between Denver and Longmont. And then really wanted to identify the track infrastructure improvements that would be needed by the BNSF, understand what type of agreements we would need with the BNSF as well. And one of those is an access easement, which is basically a real property acquisition to actually get track time from them. It's like literally an easement. And then we would have some operational cost as well, just for dispatching and maintenance of the rail. Next slide, please. So the conclusion, what we found out at the end of the day, for the infrastructure that's needed, this is covered in this cost. Stations, track infrastructure, a midday storage site at Westminster, because since we're bringing 3 trains in, we have to do something with them during the middle of the day before we return them back to Longmont. And then the rail maintenance facility up in Longmont. So the estimated ridership based on the 2019 DRCOG travel demand model was 1,100 boardings a day in 2030. And then we also, just for information, we did look at locomotive hauled coaches. There's a lot of different technologies of trains right now. A lot of that's emerging technology, but this is the basis for our cost estimate at this point. That does not necessarily mean that is what would have to happen if we move forward with peak service. But the total cost that the study discovered was $650 million for the capital cost to provide that with all the track work, stations, et cetera. And then with an annual estimated operating cost of $12 to $16 million. Next slide, please. And so one thing I would say on funding, obviously, I think many of you may know this at this point, that $650 million is more than what we have in the Fast Track's internal savings account, the FISA. I think that's kind of close to about $200 million. And then additional funding because of the ridership numbers for the cost. We're not super competitive. We're not really competitive for large grants that would cover the whole corridor, things like New Starts. Things like CRISI grants are really more for commuter or not intercity rail and freight rail. There's not a lot of commuter rail type funding available from the federal government for this corridor. So one thing I do want to touch on, and we've been working with FRPR and the governor's office and CDOT over the years as they look at their intercity rail, the FRPR. And, wanted to kind of point out a few different things between these services. Commuter rail, it really kind of serves one central kind of city hub. Typically, the distance between stations is a little bit closer. The speed is a little bit slower than intercity rail, and, the service links tend to be shorter. So when we kind of get into a little bit more information about the joint service, that'll be, I think, it'll lead into some of those discussions and considerations. But all along, I think, obviously we've been keeping an eye on what's going on with intercity rail, trying to understand what type of potential partnerships and strategies there might be to kind of work together to move forward. And I apologize, we're trying to get through this pretty quick. So I will pass it on right now to Chrissy Bright with the Front Range Passenger Rail, and then I think we'll take questions at the end, is I believe the plan. So
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Are you my slide guy in the back corner? All right, let's go ahead 8 slides. I'm gonna help us keep on our time horizon here. So the one that says Front Range Passenger Rail District. I heard you
Councilmember Hinkle. So again, my name is Chrissy Brighton with the Front Range Passenger Rail District. I think our primary goal tonight is to first add a lot of confusion, throw a lot at you, but by the end of the night, provide some clarity and explain sort of what are the differences in these different projects and how are they all coming together. So just to kind of recap what Patrick said before I get into my piece, Patrick from RTD was recently completed a study of a commuter rail system between Denver and Longmont. That is part of an effort to implement the Fast Tracks plan that voters approved in 2004. So that is the commuter rail RTD part of this story. On a separate track, I'm with Front Range Passenger Rail, and we are an intercity project. So from the entire Front Range, from generally speaking, Fort Collins down through Denver, down to Pueblo, looking to implement that sort of longer distance intercity service. And at the risk of spending too much time here, I do want to kind of lay out some key foundations of our history. This state has had, I think, years and years of visionary planning about what can we do for a passenger rail solution that connects the entire state. And there have been really lofty visionary studies to this effect that have really struggled to have the ability to be implemented. Some of the work for Front Range Passenger Rail came out of actually efforts to keep a long distance Amtrak train that runs between Chicago and LA operational. It's called the Southwest Chief, and at a point in time, it was going to be rerouted out of Colorado because of some track concerns. And legislators and local community groups came together to preserve that train. And that effort to keep the Southwest Chief running through southern Colorado then kind of sprung further to how can we truly connect the entire Front Range. And so this rail commission was stood up through the legislature in 2017 that was looking at what is a rail project we can implement, really, again, connecting sort of the northern Wyoming border down to the New Mexico border. What came from that was a study completed in 2020 that looked at what is kind of that best step for Colorado to start with. And it was the idea to interoperate on freight tracks. So starting service by using existing freight tracks helps to minimize the cost and really start to build things up gradually. It's a common practice across the country. In 2020, Colorado received a federal grant to do a service development plan. So it's a service planning process in partnership with the Federal Railroad Administration to really build that business case to the federal government. This is a corridor that is feasible, it makes smart business sense, and it's worth investing in. As this study has been completed, the legislature in 2021 established the Front Range Passenger Rail District. If you want to go to the next slide, Mr. Thank you, sir. And so again, we're an organization, we are a special district, a statutory district created through Senate Bill 21238. If you can kind of sort of see it, we are the blue boundaries, our taxing district on that map. And we were really created recognizing that there would be a need to truly fund and finance a robust project. And so we would have the administrative capacity to really do that. And so we have a 24-person board of directors spanning the 13 counties along that rail route. You'll note as part of that intercity passenger rail kind of ethos, our station stops are fairly far apart, and our corridor again runs from Pueblo all the way to Fort Collins. Next slide, please. I mentioned our large board of directors. Just want to let you all know that we have largely an MPO sort of representatives on our board, as well as some gubernatorial appointments and some ex officio members from a variety of key stakeholder groups. But I just want you to know that you are represented on our board primarily through Dr. with Sarah Nermella of Westminster, Joan Peck of Longmont, Chris Nevitt of Denver, and Deborah Mulvey of Castle Pines. Next slide, please. All right, let's keep going. Awesome. Okay, so as I mentioned, we are looking to interoperate on existing freight tracks, a rail service between Fort Collins to Pueblo with 9 station stops along that route. Ideally looking to initiate a starter service by 2029 with full build out by 2045. Looking at ridership demands, looking at sort of what makes sense for this corridor. Generally speaking, it's about 4 to 10 daily round trips is where we would be looking to optimize, scaling up incrementally over time as service builds and ridership demand grows. Intercity passenger rail, as Patrick mentioned, is sort of a faster service. You stop less frequently, and it's a sort of a faster travel times than you would have by sort of the typical commuter rail system you see in the Denver RTD system. I also want to note the Front Range Passenger Rail District, our enabling legislation, has a requirement to be travel time competitive with automobiles. So that's a huge part of what we're pushing for in this project. And I'm going to keep moving fast as we were told to go fast, so I apologize.
I'm just curious what we're talking about FRPR, because I thought we were getting a joint service update, and we obviously aren't getting any service from Front Range Passenger Rail. So I would rather focus on the part that's going to benefit Broomfield residents.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm going fast too, and I'm getting through the slides. I think what we
Thank
need
you.
to understand though is that there are two key pieces that have to come together for this to really happen. And so you have the overlays of
Still trying to understand how Loveland got a stop and we didn't, because they're only 13 miles from Fort Collins. So
Yeah.
that's not like a large amount of space, whereas we're about the same distance from Boulder.
yeah.
And they're Loveland and Fort Collins aren't even in the RTD district. They don't pay a penny toward RTD services or for fast tracks. So I still have a little bit of a problem with this whole plan because I don't think it's equitable. And there's really just not that much to get excited about for Broomfield because we are getting passed up.
I'm happy to kind of continue to tell you the story of where we started from and the foundation we're building to towards today that provides a stop for Broomfield and show the partnership working together. So I'd like to finish my slides if that's okay, and I'll hand it over quickly to Brandon Schaefer. All right, let's keep going, my friend. All right, we can skip through this one and into the next one if you don't mind. Thanks. So as I was mentioning, we're doing a service development plan right now with the Federal Railroad Administration. CDOT, Mo Sullivan is part of the team leading that. And it's really just a comprehensive planning document that demonstrates, again, as I was saying earlier, sort of a financial and feasible plan for implementing rail service. Let's go to the next slide. One more after that, please. All right, one more after that. All right, one more after that. And then, so maybe to the next one then as well. Okay, so recognizing that there is a need to bridge the fast tracks plan, recognizing that with Front Range Passenger Rail and how there's been a lot of rail conversations on this corridor, and recognizing the need to sort of rebuild community and voter trust, there's been a near-term initiative between the governor's office, CDOT, Front Range Passenger Rail, RTD, and the two funding fee enterprises to work towards that initial starter service that could be implemented in a near-term way before going to the voters for any more taxing resources. So we are collaborating with our partners on the idea of a near-term joint service that would blend the Front Range Passenger Rail intercity backbone with a few additional RTD stops to really be that nice bridge between fast tracks and Front Range Passenger Rail and to really address some of the concerns that you mentioned, Mayor. A couple months ago, all of the boards on the screen adopted an IGA to form a Joint Service Executive Oversight Committee. So we are working collaboratively to develop an initial phase project. And I will hand it over now to Brandon and Mo, who can kind of keep speaking to the joint service story. Thank you.
Thank you, Chrissy. As she mentioned, my name is Mo Sullivan. I'm the Assistant Director of Passenger Rail for CDOT. If you could advance the next slide, please. Keep going till the next presentation. And so what I'm going to cover is kind of joint service. So bringing together, the benefit of this corridor is it's been studied a lot, right? So there's a lot of work that's been done that we can leverage towards joint service. So what is joint service? Next slide. It is a collaborative effort between RTD, the Front Range Passenger Rail District, and CDOT to develop a starter passenger rail service by 2029. And this was part of Senate Bill 184. And so the mandate really is for all of us to work together to leverage the existing work that's been done to deliver service faster than we would be able to otherwise with these other two plans that have been presented previously, and to make sure that we're leveraging the existing resources, and so not asking for additional monies, but really using the existing financial resources to deliver that service. And so as part of that, we're kind of combining the two projects. And so on the right-hand side of the screen, you'll see all of the stations that are reflected as part of the joint service effort. So including, all the ones that are included from Denver to Fort Collins for Front Range Passenger Rail District, and those 3 additional ones that were part of the Northwest Peak study. And just a note that CDOT, as Chrissy mentioned, is also overseeing the service development plan for Front Range Passenger Rail. And so going forward, that's a very iterative process that we are going to submit to FRA by the end of this year. But our plans and our implementation plan does include this route and these stops as part of the service development plan. And so, as this is kind of that starter service, we envision these to be the stations for, the future vision whenever we are able to get to that full build out of Front Range Passenger Rail. So including the Broomfield station. Next slide. So why was this model chosen? So I think, Patrick talked about kind of all of the different plans that had been identified for the corridor from RTD's side. We've also heard from kind of the iteration and the history of developing Front Range passenger rail. Great visionary kind of plans, but not enough money to advance them in their kind of full build out. And the time horizons are really long. And so what can we do now with the existing resources and a lot of the studies and work that has already been done? And so this kind of outlines the timeline of kind of the RTD and Front Range passenger rail efforts. But by them kind of pursuing those efforts separately, it's going to cost more to do each of those. There's inefficiencies. And so the goal of joint service, and which was directed by Senate Bill 184, was to bring everyone together to the table for one plan to get service on the tracks as soon as possible. Next slide. And so how is this being funded? So Senate Bill 184 not only directed these parties to work together to develop this plan, but also leveraged that congestion mitigation, that fee on rental cars. Additionally, Senate Bill 230, the oil and gas fee, has dedicated funding for this project. And then, of course, the Fast Tracks sales and use tax that's been collected for the Northwest Corridor. And so, the intention is to use all of those, that pool of resources, the technical expertise at all of these different organizations to deliver a service as fast as possible. Next slide. And so Brandon Schaefer is really going to outline kind of the timeline of how we got here, next steps, and potential outcomes.
Thank you, Mo. I'll start with spring of 24 for you all. So last spring, the legislature passed those two new revenue streams, fees, and then we have the available revenue through 184 and 230. The principals, so this is Deborah Johnson, Chrissy Bright, Lisa Kaufman, Piper Darlington, Craig Seacrest, and Herman Stockinger from CDOT, all convened last summer for the first time to really jointly plan passenger rail to the Northwest Corridor. Previously, there had never really been a joint large meeting like that before, but 184 really did direct the entities to collaborate, and that happened and occurred last summer. Between summer of 24 and June of 25, the parties all met concurrently. There was an operations working group, a finance working group, and a governance working group really working to get an intergovernmental agreement between all the entities to form what's called joint service. And so leading up to June, all that work was being done with lawyers and with Chrissy and others to really stand up this legal entity to negotiate with BNSF for the sole purpose of getting one access agreement on one alignment to deliver passenger rail by 2029. So what's really exciting is that we went through at least 50 board members between May and June of this year to present the IGA, the intergovernmental agreement, and really show each entity what the benefit was and what this serves as. And then just a few weeks ago, almost a month to the day, the state of Colorado, RTD, FRPR began access agreement negotiations with BNSF to get the contract really set up to have it passenger rail established here in Colorado on the northern segment, which is really, really exciting. We can go to the next slide, please. The goal of the access, the goals that we have here laid out for you, kind of just what's next, is that by December of this year, we are hoping to get an access agreement with a Class 1 railroad. Mountain Rail, which is from Denver to Craig, Colorado. We did that in 4 months this year, which is record time. Usually these take at least a bare minimum of 1 to 3 years to get negotiated, and we are looking to break some records here in Colorado, having already done that earlier this year for Mountain Rail. Once that has been wrapped up, we hope that by January of 2026, we can begin going to all of the governing boards and really present, here's what was agreed upon in the access agreement, here's the cost of the project. Earlier this year, myself and a colleague, Barrick, presented to you all on the March 1st findings, which said, the initial study found about $885 million to initiate passenger rail service along the corridor. But through access agreement negotiations, we will actually be able to negotiate directly with BNSF for the actual capital projects that are needed to commence the service, including a stop in Westminster, Broomfield, and Louisville before commencing to Boulder, and then onwards. And then through Q1 really of next year, presenting that financial plan to all the boards to vote on and begin appropriating money that they have for this project. For Broomfield, this is long overdue. For Westminster, this is long overdue. And so really the next step after the access agreement is boards voting on joint service and whether or not to appropriate money or direct funds to the project. Once that's been done, fingers crossed, we will get there, is that from 2026, next year, all the way through 2028, the procurement and construction for joint service will commence because the start date in statute is January 1st, 2029. So literally on New Year's Day, a few years from now, service will begin from Denver onwards here to Broomfield, Boulder, Longmont, and then onwards to Larimer County. We're excited by this. We can go to the next slide, but I think this is actually my ending, not my ending. The access agreement, what I'll let you all, what the corridor will likely learn from this agreement is a schedule. You all will learn the cost of the project, the kind of relationship that the state will have with RTD, with BNSF for the access agreement, and then really what the access fee will be, what the annual operations and maintenance or the O&M will be, what the insurance and indemnification will be, any KPIs as well, and then we'll also know what the capital projects are. So if you were to go to CDOT's Mountain Rail project website, the access agreement that we struck with Union Pacific is posted there as a sample for the public to look at and observe and read if you want to, an 85 page legal document. But what you won't learn in this final access agreement is the actual operating costs for the operator of this project. And so once we actually get to this, we need to go out and find an operator for this, but it's likely to be Amtrak for a couple of different reasons. And then we also won't know what the rolling stock will be. So this is the actual train that you get on. We won't know the actual cost of that either because that's operator dependent. The other item that you probably won't learn in the timeline or in the access agreement is the timeline of we are starting with 3 daily round trips. Front Range Passenger Rail was looking at 10 daily round trips. And so that's not going to be in this access agreement, as well as that the district needs to go to a vote of the people to actually have the sales tax to increase service and frequency. Next slide. And then just here, I'm sorry, my image does not look well right here, but we are on a path to deliver service by 2029. We have remarkable leadership in the General Assembly and in the governor's office to really push on these projects and make sure that they're done on an expeditious timeline, just knowing that we need to prove to voters that government can do big things, that this is not California high-speed rail, and that we're doing things in a very efficient manner here in Colorado. This is just the starter service. This is not meant to be the end-all be-all, but we are starting Denver North because the communities here have been paying into FISA and into Fast Tracks for well over 20 years at this point. And so what we're trying to do is provide a proof of concept for voters on the southern segment that your tax dollars will be used judiciously, that they will be protected, and actually go towards the rail project that you are voting on. And so what we're hoping to do is a starter service here in the north before, and then just show Colorado that we can do projects looking at Mountain Rail and here Denver North to do this project for the full district. That's the end of the presentation. I think we can start with Q&A. I'm sure council may have a lot of questions here, and then we'll just direct them to the necessary partners, colleagues behind me here.
Thank you very much. And I don't usually go first, but I have a question. You're saying no new sales tax revenue is needed to commence a starter service, but there seems like there's still a lot of unknown costs that you can't tell us how much it's going to cost.
So when we were here, Mayor, in March, that I think at the end, we presented me and Barrick our initial study of $885 million. And so in that 885, and I'm happy to send this back around to council as well, is that we kind of broke it down on what are the capital projects needed. So are there any new sidings that are needed? Basically letting freight go and then we pull over for freight, or vice versa, passenger rail goes and they pull over for us. There was also rolling stock in there, the annual operations and maintenance. And so that 885 million was broken down into some different categories there. That's just a study. So once we actually start negotiating with BNSF, they will actually verify the engineering. And that's already been done through RTD's peak rail service feasibility study to 30% designs. So we are entering negotiations in a really strong starting place of already having a lot of this design work done. And they can just verify the costs for us. And we can actually know with certainty what the actual number is rather than just an estimate based on a study. Does that help a little bit?
As much as possible. I mean, you can understand why we have skepticism. I'm sure people were just as excited in 2004 when they willingly agreed to keep paying money, which I think is over 90 million and counting, with not much to show for it besides a bus. So I think I want to be reassured that this isn't another Fast Tracks. right? Like that we're all night just dreaming big again. It seems like you're doing a lot more work on the study part that obviously didn't happen in 2004. But there's a credibility issue. There's a trust issue among Broomfielders who have been paying this for 40 or 20 years, right? So now you're talking about Front Range passenger rail going all the way to Fort Collins, but passing up Broomfield. So can you clarify, will joint service start before Front Range passenger rail?
Yes.
It
So
will be
that-
the first train
It will be the first.
and it
train.
will stop in Broomfield.
And we are fighting for a stop in Broomfield, yes.
Fighting?
In the March 1st report, so what we did was we submitted a report to the legislature and the governor's office. And in that design, in that study, we modeled what it would look like to have a station in Broomfield or Westminster, Broomfield, Louisville. So adding those fast track stops into joint service as a hybrid between those two services. So we have that in there. And then in the March 1st report, we also have the 116th location actually listed in that study as a station site for Broomfield.
And that's predicted at 2029.
January 1st, 2029.
But you're gonna have to go and ask the voters for more money before that.
Not necessarily. So we have enough. So there is enough existing revenue between those two fee revenues that the state stood up, 184 and 230, and then RTD's sales and use tax for fast tracks. And so the negotiation really will illuminate how much this costs. Patrick Stanley, who just presented, said that it would cost $12 to $16 million a year for RTD to implement this service. And then when we did our study, the cost was about 82, but that also has a really high debt number in there baked in at about $50 million a year. And then we have, actually might be lower than that, but there's a gap in that study that shows what the state could contribute and about we would be able to reduce the cost for RTD. And so what we're hoping to do during these negotiations is actually get hard final costs from BNSF to say, within the RTD region, these are the costs that we know. And then outside of the district, for example, Loveland and Fort Collins, here's what those capital projects are outside of the scope of RTD. So we will have verified costs from the Class 1 railroad to go back to and do a financial plan and actually know how much this costs in Q1 of next year.
Okay, so you're not gonna ask our taxpayers to pay more until you actually deliver a train.
That's right.
Good.
That's right.
Smart. All right, any questions from my colleagues? None? Oh, Councilmember Henkel.
Thank you. Mayor had same questions as I did. She worded it differently. She has more experience in this area, so I appreciate her guidance. And I also appreciate all of your work. I know that you all do so much work in this area and you have to specify, the needs that you're reaching for all different areas. So I appreciate your willingness to explain it to all of us. I did have a constituent just ask about, he was concerned. I'll just ask to address the question. As far as BNSF, why are we creating or why are we using places that are already in place versus not? For me, it's a logical answer to me, but can you explain to the public why would we have an access agreement with BNSF versus making our own rail?
Just the cost alone is really expensive to lay down new tracks and lay down new steel. So we are using existing BNSF tracks. We're not laying anything new on the ground, which is a massive cost savings. And then also through Patrick's presentation, I think there were at least 2 studies mentioned, one in 2014 and then the peak service feasibility. This is a heavily studied corridor. We know a lot of the engineering needs. We know a lot of the stations where they're going to be at for Northwest Rail. And so what we did was just take from the existing studies and say, these are the proposed locations we want to put stations, at least in the localities, for this to just start building from there.
Great, thank you. And my last question is just you talked about advocating or you have to talk to different boards in 2026. Are you asking other entities to engage with those boards or who's engaging with the boards?
We will certainly engage as a joint group with all of the boards. We need the appropriating boards really will be the Clean Transit Enterprise, the Colorado Transportation Investment Office, because they are the 2 state agencies that are going to receive this fee revenue. And then we also need to go in front of RTD to the board of directors there and the general manager and present a financial plan to ask them to vote on that as well. So just advocate to your RTD board member once the plan has been released, because it will be critical that they hear from you all as elected officials that there's potential support for this, but you all, I think, need to weigh in before that happens.
Thank you very much. We'd
Of
love to
course.
do that.
Thank you.
All right, Councilmember Lim.
I'll start with the funding question first. Are the funding sources, are they in any way at risk for hands dipping into them with the budget straits of the state?
No. It's a fee revenue, and so that's not going to be touched by the legislature because they're going into different buckets. The legislature, what you've seen in the past couple of years, at least in this most recent session and the special session, was cutting from the general fund. And so, for example, the rental car fee just started in January of this year, and so it only got a half year of money flowing into that account first. And then the oil and gas fee is a longer runway, so that fee actually won't be starting to be collected until the end of this year, actually. So we won't see that money until 2026 actually go to the Clean Transit Enterprise.
Okay, thank you. I heard what could be contradictory information. So I heard Mr. Stanley of RTD say that you're still looking at emerging technology. And then I heard that construction will start in 2026 to 2028. So when I had gone to open houses on this before. So, and I had looked at, where they're showing lovely diesel trains, and I'm thinking that is not what we want. And so I commented on that. So what I was told at the time when I said, no, we do not want diesel trains, is that the technology has to be determined before construction begins. So the window for waiting for emerging technology seems to be closing very quickly if we're going to begin construction in 2026. Am I missing something here? Should I have hope here still?
You can have hope. Oh my God, please have hope. There is a lot of new emerging technology for electric, hydrogen options, but I'm actually going to let Mo and Patrick kind of answer that technical question there.
Yeah, so part of the trade-off between kind of being able to start service as soon as possible with, the lowest cost option and the existing resources versus kind of waiting for emerging technologies or investing in that is that they're not the goals aren't complementary. And so right now with the emerging technologies, it's a lot more expensive to implement. Right now, the easiest way to have an electric train is to have that overhead catenary wire that RTD has on their commuter rail system. And so I'm not sure how your residents would feel about installing that, but it is quite expensive as well. And so that's a trade-off we need to consider about, do we wait for this emerging technology, a cleaner technology, knowing that it could take a lot longer and be a lot more expensive. And so instead, what we've decided to do is start as soon as possible with the technology that's proven and continue to study and figure out ways to get cleaner and cleaner and cleaner over time, especially as some of these future plans for, the Front Range passenger rail district, the full build out continue to be developed, and as we work towards that full vision. Patrick, I don't know.
Yeah, I may sneak in just a little bit. Thank you for the question. I will say on the overhead catenary system, just as a clarification, basically we have some bridge clearance issues on the BNSF rail line that we would have to reconstruct a lot of bridges in order to make the clearance. That's the main reason why we don't, why RTD is not looking at the overhead electrified catenary system. So when I said the emerging technology, when we did the peak service study, we didn't necessarily know what our time frame was going to be for the implementation and when we would have the funding for that. But we know that we had a reliable that meets Buy America requirements and all that sort of thing that we could at least base the price on. For the peak service study, that's all we wanted to do is get a baseline price. We didn't want to rule out any potential technologies. A lot of those are still kind of, work in progress. There's some things in California that are being put in by Stadler as an example, and I think Alstrom is another train manufacturer that has a few. I'd say they're still there. I think the other thing that I might mention is that with the potential operator, there might also be some consideration with what they typically use as their rolling stock fleet. So a couple things in there. I wouldn't necessarily rule anything out, but I think right now it's, we are kind of basing at least the RTD's perspective when we did the peak service on what is kind of a known technology that we know we can get that meets all the criteria today. So.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for the question.
All right, Councilmember Wynn.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a lot of questions, and I just want to say I really appreciate the presentations. I've been a proponent for public transportation. This council is very pro public transit. I mean, we just want the service. I mean, that's at the end of the day, that's what we want. We want the service in Broomfield. We want to have the stops here. So a couple questions in mind, and not to fear mongering like that, but earlier this year, our Congresswoman claimed that federal dollars were included in this project. And you just went through that most of this is state dollars. These are fees. Is there any possibility for federal dollars being rescinded or taken, and would that affect this project?
I would say that there are very limited federal dollars right now for FRPR specifically, for the Corridor ID program. And so the only federal dollars that exist right now are literally just for the planning for the service development plan. So there's not a whole lot to rescind at this point.
Great. So easy answer right there. Next one is lawsuits or potential delays with joint service. I mean, eminent domain, there's a lot of concerns there. Would that cause for any delays, or is that like through the IGAs, will that be addressed?
Currently, there's no need for eminent domain at this time for joint service.
Thank you. I really appreciate the answer. And next one is going to be the provider for the service. I assume it's going to be Amtrak or?
It's likely to be. It could be Amtrak. And the reason I say likely is just part of passenger rail and one of the challenges, one of the most costliest parts of the actual O&M of passenger rail is insurance and indemnification. And since we're operating on BNSF's line, they have a clear preference. They operate, it's a Class 1 railroad that operates the most amount of passenger rail across the country. And a lot of their passenger rail is partnered with Amtrak because they bring Congress actually insures and indemnifies Amtrak fully. The state of Colorado has a provision in our state constitution that doesn't allow the state to actually do that. And so to meet that requirement for a host railroad, the options become a little bit more limited on an operator who can come to the table with that. So for that reason, Amtrak is still in the mix.
I appreciate the answer. Thank you so much, Mr. Schaefer. My last question is, even though, Governor Polis's term will be ending probably next year because he's term limited in 2026, and we'll have a new governor, will that have any effect if there's a new governor, that whether they be a Democrat, Republican with this project? Because in 2004 and 2007 and 2008, we had a new governor, and it was clearly, Bill Owens, he clearly made that, fast tracks were to serve communities in the southern parts of Colorado instead of the Northwest corridor.
A couple different ways to approach this. One is that we are standing up Mountain Rail by November 1st, 2026 next year. So before Governor Polis's term is even up, Colorado will have one major intercity passenger rail service beginning to be stood up. And so that will instill a lot of trust in the electorate and show voters that government can still do big things and move people across the state in a way that doesn't mean you have to get in a vehicle. The other approach, I can't really speak to gubernatorial election a year out from now, but this is a priority for the state right now, and we're going to work very fast to ensure that these projects are have advanced to a stage where we can have passenger rail be delivered.
Thank you. And I really, again, I do appreciate the answers and the presentation. I feel like we just want service. We've been paying for fees for 20 years, subsidizing other communities, and Broomfield just wants to get what it's owed. So thank you very much.
If I can add a little bit more onto the answer to that, Senate Bill 184 also requires shall service not begin January 1st, 2029. RTD and FRPR have to report every 6 months to the governor or to the legislature of why service has not commenced and provide actual rationale for that reason. So there's also, while 184 was a transformative piece of legislation, there's also an accountability piece in there too, to actually ensure that if there's no service starting by that date, they have to publicly report why that's happening. And the public can always, once that date hits, also participate in that process, I think.
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to that. So again, I appreciate I yield the rest of my time here.
Thank you, Councilmember Goen.
Thank you, Mayor. I just have one quick question. I was looking at your slides about your projections in terms of 3 million more residents by 2050, but that doesn't seem to square with the state demographer office says more like 1.5 to 1.8 as our growth rates slowed and our birth rates has slowed. And I'm just curious as how confident we are on the projections in terms of the population growth and getting people to ride a train. RTD seems to be having substantial trouble in our most congested areas of Denver to get people on a train. At least every time I see an RTD train, it's virtually empty. And it's just also the difficulty of convincing people and the people working from home, businesses aren't on this corridor. It's really expected to double. That's a huge population off to the east. And so I'm curious about that, how confident you are that these numbers bear out.
Appreciate the question. So that stat came from about 2020, when between 2020 and 2050, we're expecting to have 3 million more people in Colorado. You're absolutely right that growth curve is slowing. People are still coming. And when I hear questions like this, where my mind still goes to is I-25 is crappy now, and it's going to stay crappy and get worse into the future. In regards to the ridership question, I think what's important to appreciate is that intercity rail typically has a fairly different ridership base from commuter rail. Across the country, you see these sort of services in Virginia, in Chicago to Minneapolis, and the Gulf Coast up in California area. They have really strong ridership that's rebounded a lot since the pandemic. These are the kind of trips you take because you have been working at home all week. You want to get out on the weekends. You want to get out after work and do different parts of the state. And so we see the ridership demand there really strongly, and that's not a concern that we have. I think you're absolutely right. Where's my pen? That this growth is happening all throughout the state. And so it's absolutely fair to say there is growth happening in Weld County and happening in Greeley. And I think in speaking in a very long-term sense, part of the goal of the Front Range Passenger Rail District is to provide that kind of spine that would then spur off opportunities for future connectivity to other areas that also have strong growth happening as well.
Appreciate that answer. So it's part of your calculation. It's not commuters necessarily, people going from work to work, but people in Fort Collins who want to go to the new Mile High or the new women's soccer stadium or other amenities that are getting concentrated downtown.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. Commuters will be part of the ridership, but not all of the ridership.
My wife was recently in Japan, so she rode the bullet train.
Yeah.
So I could see the appeal. If this was a bullet train, people would get on that. So if we can get bullet trains and clean 7-Elevens like they have there.
I know, the 7-Elevens especially. Yeah.
Things would get good. So, okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Ward.
Thank you, Mayor. My first question is going to be to Mr. Schaefer. I think in your one of your speeches regarding your presentation, you said that there was, in terms of stations, you had identified Broomfield 116th. Was that the one that you all have decided is where our station is going to be, or is that just a station you threw out just because it's?
Okay, so we actually collaborated and we reached out to Sarah Grant, the transportation planning manager. And I think we had a conversation as well with the mayor that in this March 1st report of the 2 stations that Broomfield currently has listed under Northwest Rail, is there a preferred site you would like us to insert into the study that has transit-oriented development potential, has multimodal options already existing there? Is the land use, can you tell us which one we should, for the purposes just alone of the March 1st report, which one we should use? And so we went with 116th based on the advice and guidance that we got, just based off of what you all have done as a county and city.
Okay. My only concern that I have with that particular location is RTD itself doesn't even own any properties near where that potential station would be, unlike they do at Flatiron Station, according to our assessor's office. And so I'm trying to, with your comment to Councilmember Nguyen about not using eminent domain, how you're going to be able to negotiate a sale price or use eminent domain for that particular station and further drive up the cost when RTD already owns property that it can use both at Flatiron Station existing, but on the other side of the tracks that it owns for the future rail station.
I might actually lean on Patrick for this one. For Flatirons, yeah, I'm sorry.
Call a friend, I
Yeah.
don't care.
Yeah, I think I know a little bit. So we do own some property, correct, up on the northeast of the Flatiron Station. But I guess what I would say is, I think just like every other quarter that we would typically, that we've done for, RTD in the past, there are times when we have to acquire property. Obviously, from RTD's perspective, we would prefer not to do eminent domain. Absolutely, if we don't have to. We try to come up with an amicable agreement with property owners. You are right, and we could potentially save some real estate price there. It kind of depends on what's going on with the station, how much area we need to actually use for parking, et cetera. And, you know, if we were to purchase it, you know, what kind of impact that really is. What I would maybe encourage though, I think is really, I think from Broomfield's perspective, think really about what you all think is the best for your community. And I don't know that the price for that right away that we might have to purchase would be a factor that might outweigh what you think is the best location for you as a community, if that makes sense. I agree. It's would be some additional cost there, but you know, something to think about, I think, is from Broomfield's perspective.
Okay, I have many thoughts on that, but we won't have time to get into that tonight. And this council will get to make that decision when it comes before the council. Continuing on with you, is RT using joint service as a way to get out of completing Northwest Rail as promised?
I would say no, that's not the intent. You know, I think when we were doing the peak service study, I will say this, we identified, I think pretty early on that doing a joint service is probably our best bet to get something quicker on the corridor. I would not necessarily say that it's kind of change the way we look at the future. I can't make that determination. It kind of depends on funding and what our board wants to do as RTD. But I would say that's not the purpose, is to try to get out of necessarily what we're doing. I don't know exactly what it will look like as ridership grows and, you know, expansion opportunities come up, but no, that's not the intent of RTD.
Okay, the reason I asked that question is in the mid-future, RTD's fast track sales tax is not going to be bringing enough revenue to cover its existing debt obligations for fast tracks. And it will then have to start pulling funds from the general fund. And that doesn't factor in any new capital expenditures related to Northwest Rail, North Line, L Line extension, Southwest Rail extension. And looking at it from that perspective, ignoring Northwest Rail and any of the other extensions, even though you are mandated by state law to complete them, is one way to kind of reduce that debt obligation going forward and ensure the solvency of fast tracks. It's the only reason I asked that question.
Fair question.
Now, in terms of partnering for joint rail service, does RTD, I shouldn't say, does this joint service have the intent of providing more service between Longmont and Denver than Fort Collins and Denver, knowing that Longmont to Denver is already paying an additional sales tax that Loveland and Fort Collins, as the mayor pointed out, have not been paying for 20 years. And we're not even getting full FF service anyways right now.
I don't know that I don't believe that's the case. To have slightly different services between the two, we're looking at 3 round trips per day for this first joint service. I mean, you couldn't really, in my opinion, really drop it much less than that and have it useful. So I think, you know, one of the, I think as a group, what we need to think about too is kind of how we look at the entire corridor. I know that's FRPR's thing too, and I don't want to step on your toes. But basically, you know, they're looking at it obviously from Fort Collins all the way down to Pueblo as well. And, you know, what services go in what areas. The mandate for Senate Bill 184 was 3 round trips from Denver Union Station to Fort Collins. So we aren't, due to that, we're not necessarily looking at anything differently than that. So did I hit it okay? For you guys? Yeah, go ahead.
Just to supplement onto Patrick's question, when we were in front of the RTD board also presenting the March 1 findings and then concurrently throughout this year, one of the questions that board members were asking was, is RTD sales tax going to be spent outside of our district boundaries? And so one of the things that we did to the cost estimate was actually, let's go back and actually break out the cost of the project within RTD's boundaries and outside RTD's boundaries to find what those costs actually are. That way, when it does go to the board, they know how much sales and use tax they are actually appropriating to the project that are within their boundaries versus outside of their boundaries, to make it a little bit easier. That way, the sales and use tax that's being collected within the jurisdiction of RTD is being spent within that.
Logically, that all makes sense. I agree. For the public who's not necessarily paying attention to this or cares that, you know, RTD is only paying a certain percentage based on what's mileage within its jurisdiction, et cetera, they're seeing Broomfield gets 3 trains a day, Longmont gets 3 trains a day, Fort Collins and Loveland get 3 trains a day. They haven't paid anything from a sales tax for 20 years, and they're getting service. So I want you all to recognize the optics. Logic is not going to play a factor in this. It doesn't matter. Optics is important for this. So somehow that needs to be addressed. I don't necessarily have the answer of how that would be addressed, but I would encourage you all to think about that from that perspective.
Yeah, and I'll just add one other piece of that is that, you know, with joint service being that starter service before Front Range starts, it is ensuring that Broomfield has a stop on the Front Range passenger rail alignment. And so, you know, you all are now part of that full vision for Front Range passenger rail.
That's a wonderful segment to my next question for Ms. Bright. When is the Front Range Passenger Rail Board of Directors going to officially adopt Louisville, Broomfield, and Westminster stations as official stations on the corridor?
I appreciate the question. We don't have a firm target date for that adoption. I actually have some meetings next week to sort of start working with the board on some policy items there. So we don't have a target deadline for that, but definitely it's on our near-term kind of work plan.
Why is it taking so long? To us, it shouldn't seem like that hard.
I hear what you're saying. I would say that joint service it's, you know, I think a year and a half ago, this was, you know, a brand new conversation. So we're just really seeing kind of what does it look like? How do the legs develop? And then from that place, decide how to work through it from policy perspective.
Okay, that didn't really answer my question because all you're doing is officially putting in these 3 stations as official stations so that way we have some assurance that the rug is not going to be pulled out from underneath us once again. And I don't see what are the hurdles in your way besides just putting it on an agenda and having the board vote on it. Can you walk us through what are the issues besides just having policy conversations?
I guess respectfully, when we were initially looking at intercity passenger rail stations, Broomfield, Westminster, and Louisville were not part of that conversation. And so as we're looking to more of this hybridized first step, we now have to look at our policies and adapt accordingly. I can encourage you to absolutely write a public comment to our board of directors. We can ensure they get it. And I can again tell you that we are working through policies on behalf of our board, so how we want to move through this. I would just say these are large, complex projects, and sometimes you have to take time to work through the steps that are part of that. And so we are doing that right now.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other council member questions? Well, thank you all for being here tonight, and thank you for the latest updates. We look forward to hearing more.
Awesome. Thank you all very much for your time.
Thank you. Well, that concludes the agenda items for this evening's study session. Is there any other business to come before the council from my colleagues or staff? There being no further business, the study session is adjourned. Good night.